coverage of Hurricane Sandy, and these are the conditions right now as we speak. This is a live picture of Penn's Landing. You can barely make anything out. It's just very foreboding at this time.
Of course, that there, the Ben Franklin Bridge, one of several bridges that is shut down or at least restricted to traffic. No truck traffic is allowed over several of the Delaware River bridges at this moment, but of course that's just one of many images we'll see tonight as we continue our coverage of Hurricane Sandy this evening. It is 9 o'clock. We want to welcome our viewers, not only here on 6 ABC, but also those viewers joining us on PHL 17 tonight. The storm made landfall a short time ago and is now a tropical storm. All
Philadelphia public and Catholic schools are closed at this time, and our AccuWeather team has been tracking Sandy all day for us.
That's right. Meteorologist Adam Joseph and Cecily Tynan have the very latest on this storm. And Adam, it did, as we mentioned, make landfall a short time ago. No longer a hurricane.
Yeah, it's no longer a hurricane, but it is an extra tropical cyclone, that nor'easter. Winds are still at this moment sustained at 80 miles or 85 miles an hour. So this is still acting like a Category 1 hurricane despite the downgrade because it's losing its true tropical characteristics. In fact, Sandy's landfall occurred at 8 p.m. this evening near Atlantic City, just to the south around Summers Point in Ventnor. The max winds were 80 miles an hour. The pressure was 946 millibars. That low pressure really was amazing for this type of storm because it's more typical of a Category 3 hurricane with that pressure. And it was the strongest storm now to hit the New Jersey coastline since 1903, the Vagabond hurricane back then. Also slammed near Atlantic City with winds of 80 miles an hour, so an eerie comparison to the last one that occurred in 1903. As we take a look at Storm Tracker 6 Live right now, this is a live image of what the rainfall is looking like. It is very light across most of the region, getting some voids here and there, but the winds continue to be the star of the show tonight. In fact, although the rainfall totals are much less across most of the area than we predicted, we're still seeing these bandings coming in off of the coastline, and each one of these bands that still has to rotate in on the eastern side of the actual center of the storm will contain some hurricane force wind gusts. So this is far from over. Let's take a look at some of the rainfall totals on Storm Tracker 6 that's happened so far throughout this storm. In fact, we've seen more than 8 inches, especially down to the south of Wilmington through the state of Delaware and southern parts of New Jersey. Down here, 10 inches between Cape May and Atlantic City, 6 inches in parts of Cumberland County, near 8 to 6 inches between Wilmington and Dover. Far less to the north and to the west in Trenton and Philadelphia, about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rain. So there was a sharp cutoff. This is where most of the flooding will occur. Inland flooding to the south and west. So despite that rain shield of intense rain was shifted a little more towards the south. With the prediction of the winds of this storm, we were right on with those gusts over 80 miles an hour across the region. When you wake up tomorrow, you're going to realize how much damage it has done with trees and power lines down. As we take a look at the currents, winds 80 miles an hour sustained, moving to the west-northwest, 21. So we're slowing the movement just a little bit. The pressure is coming up now. It was 940, now it's 947, meaning the storm is starting to weaken as it's phasing to that nor'easter type system, but it's still going to pack a lot of energy and punch. So the track with this, as it hooks to the left, this is very unnatural, not typical in the atmosphere because our jet stream goes from west to east in a general fashion. So with the storm going in the opposite direction, it's going to get picked back up and then moved back to the north and east. So by Thursday, 2 p.m., it is still near Burlington, Vermont. So we're going to be under the influence tomorrow, Wednesday, even into Thursday as the winds slowly die down. And Cecily, I'm going to bring you in. These winds, we talked 88 miles an hour in Tuckerton, and those winds are going to still range near hurricane force overnight tonight, so we cannot let folks let their guard down just yet.
Exactly, Adam. And we have had a lot of people tweeting and telling us on Facebook that they have been looking out over the skies and seeing the flashes of the green and the red, and those are likely transformers blowing due to the wind. The power lines are going down, and this wind will continue into the wee hours of the morning. Now, this is the streamline, and this you can see has changed a lot from the last time we showed. This shows the center of the storm now has pushed west of Atlantic City, and And you can see how ahead of that you get the winds out of the northwest, but then behind it you do get the shifting winds out of the southeast. And as Adam did indicate, that there are some bands of some rain that will be moving in as well. So the rain is not over completely, but the torrential rain is over. But now we're going to have to be dealing with these winds as the system continues to push to the west. And this unfortunately will be leading to a lot of power outages as we head into the overnight hours. Current wind gusts in Philadelphia, 51 miles per hour. Wilmington reporting a wind gust of 41 miles an hour. Trenton, the winds really howling there, 62-mile-an-hour winds. Mount Pocono, 49. The Jersey Shore right now, due to the fact that things are weakening as the storm continues to push to the west, the wind gusts have subsided. But earlier today, we had wind gusts up to 88 miles per hour in Tuckerton. Harvey Cedars, LBI, 75-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Atlantic City, 77-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Cape May, 72. And Toms River, wind gusts up to 68 miles per hour. So the next 24 hours, we'll still be dealing with the coastal flooding, but that will be a lot better tomorrow morning. But we'll still be dealing with the wind. This is really becoming a windstorm now. So until now until about 2 o'clock in the morning, we're looking at wind gusts 50 to 80 miles per hour. The center of the storm likely moving through Philadelphia around 11 o'clock or so. You'll really hear the winds. By 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning, wind gusts 30 to 50 miles an hour. And by 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening tomorrow, they will be subsiding at 30 to 40 miles per hour. But with the wind shifting, that will cause lots of problems with the trees and the power lines down. So unfortunately, we're looking at a lot more power outages over the next several hours. We'll have some more coming up in a few moments, guys.
All right, lots of dangerous conditions out there. Thank you, Cecily. And Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett has taken steps to keep residents indoors and off the roads this evening as Sandy blows through. He has just announced that all the Delaware River Port Authority bridges, Commodore Barry, Walt Whitman, Ben Franklin, and Betsy Ross are closed until 2 o'clock in the morning.
The Bristol Bridge and Tacony Palmyra bridges, they've also been closed tonight. Governor Corbett is also closing major roadways around Philadelphia and the suburbs.
We will be closing the major interstates around Philadelphia. That's 476, 76, 676, 95. City of Philadelphia is going to close down Route 1.
It is worth repeating that. And again, these major roadways closed a couple of hours ago around Philadelphia. They'll last again, and as Shirlene mentioned, until 2 in the morning. They are 476, 76, 676, I-95, and Route 1. Again, these are major thoroughfares. It's going to have a massive impact on the rest of this night and, of course, into tomorrow. And the following bridges also: Commodore Barry, Walt Whitman, Ben Franklin, and the Betsy Ross Bridge, all closed to traffic, as is the Bristol and Tacony Palmyra bridges. The governor says residents should expect street flooding and widespread outages due to heavy winds tonight.
It's definitely a cause for concern, especially with all that wind.
That's right.
Things becoming projectiles out there. So that is why the governor wants everyone to stay indoors. Let's move on now to Action News reporter Chad Pradelli. He is live in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, with the very latest on the conditions out there. Hey, Chad, looks a lot better than earlier, let's just say.
Yes, it does. It is a lot better. Sandy is moving your way, Shirlene, and you know what? You can have her. Conditions improving here in Rehoboth Beach. Really, the rain has stopped. We do have some gusty conditions, but no real sustained winds at this point. I mean, it's windy, but not nearly as bad as we saw earlier today, last night, especially now that this rain has stopped. In terms of flooding here on Rehoboth Beach, we saw some minor localized flooding down south of us on the boardwalk. Some road closures in this immediate area. You have Route 1 shut down between Dewey and Bethany beaches. That is the worst flooding if you're talking about the shore points here in Delaware. I just got off the phone about a half an hour ago with some state officials giving me a brief assessment of what's going on in Delaware. I'm told there are about 24 roads and bridges shut down at this point for localized flooding, but I'm told those flood zones are manageable. Also, about 38 customers without power in Delaware at last check. And I tell you, there were concerns when this storm was coming ashore. There was concerns that some of that storm surge and some of those strong winds would create a lot of damage here. At this point, state officials are cautiously optimistic that there's not going to be significant flooding, at least here. Now, like Cecily said, this is a wind event. State officials watching over the next several hours to see what those winds do. We were driving around. We didn't see a whole lot of wind damage over the past several hours. And I think Delaware at this point has come away as best as possible considering what this storm looked like as it was approaching from the south and then approaching from the east. But at this point, very minimal flooding and very minimal damage. And of course, we will know more once daylight occurs and we can get out on the roads and see what sort of happens overnight with these wind gusts. But at this point, I would say so far so good in terms of what this storm and what it could have done. Charlene?
All right, thank you, Chad.
Better words never spoken there. Let's go live now to Action News reporter Jennifer Joyce, live up the beach a little bit from where Chad was. Jennifer, you're in Cape May tonight, and judging by the fact that you're still wearing a hat, I'm trusting it's a bit worse than where Chad just was.
What you has still dealing with those strong winds, kind of to reiterate a
All right, well, apparently the hat not the only indication. The signal taking some hits as well as Sandy continues to barrel up. As mentioned, no longer a hurricane. It's what's called a post-tropical storm. We'll explain that and where things stand with her right now, right after this brief break. And we welcome you back to our continuing coverage of what was Hurricane Sandy. You are watching 6 ABC, of course, and we welcome our viewers also tonight on PHL 17 for our extended coverage. It was a pretty incredible shot we just showed you there. It's something fairly rare in this area. That was 95, and what you saw there were several lights, none of them headlights from a car. 95. One of those major thoroughfares that is shut down tonight by order of Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett. You can barely make it out if you look pretty closely there. Just that black strip of wet roadway in the middle, that is 95. Typically at all hours, jammed with traffic. Not at the case at all tonight.
And now a virtual ghost town. Let's switch live now to reporter Nora Mushanik. She has changed location. She is live now at a shelter in Stafford Township, Ocean County. Nora?
Hi there, guys. We're at Southern Regional High School right now, and boy, can I tell you that things have changed precipitously in the last few minutes. It was calm out here before. Now it looks like we're getting battered all over again. The wind has picked up, the rain has kicked up. Now at this shelter, we are not allowed to bring cameras inside, but let me tell you, there are a million stories in there. There are about 500 people in there, and do the math. It doesn't exactly add up, but you know what I mean. Stories that people are telling in there. There's one couple in there apparently who they have been married for years and years, have never left the island during a storm since 1957. They've always lived through all these big storms, wouldn't leave, and then today was the day that they decided they needed to get out. They evacuated about 150 people from Long Beach Island earlier today. Some of them had to be taken in front-end loaders, others out on jet skis, and at one point the police had to say, we can't get you anymore. It was so flooded on the island, so they just had to put up with what they could, stay in the house and hope for the best. And I told you a little earlier about that harrowing ride that I took with the police officers from Long Beach Township. They needed to evacuate the building because there was concern that the roof might not hold up as the winds got higher and higher. And going through that flooding was absolutely unbelievable. The entire, one end to the other of that barrier island is just swamped with water right now. Power lines down, debris in the roadways, the ocean is punching through and just spilling down the streets. It was really quite something, and it feels like we're back there all over again. You can probably tell from my hair blowing around, but the bushes are at it, the trees are at it. We've got a lot of downed trees, I understand, here on the mainland and also back on the barrier islands. When all this is over, we are going to have such an unbelievable mess on our hands, and I don't know if you can hear it, but the winds are absolutely howling here right now. So that's the latest. Folks are starting to calm down, hunker down for the evening here at the shelter. Again, about 500 people sleeping on cots. They've run out of hot meals, and they're handing out MREs, which are those military meals ready to eat dinners. You pull a zip bag, and there's a way you can heat it up. It's not pretty, but it'll get the job done and make sure that everyone has a meal. So they're trying to take care as best they can of everyone here. So that's the latest for now from Stafford Township. I'm Nora Mushanik. Now back to you.
All right, Nora, thank you so much. And speaking of those howling winds, we're kind of hearing that in the studio right now.
We certainly are.
It's very frightening. And PECO is contending with those winds and rain as they try to get lights back on for residents tonight. The action cam caught up with crews in Broomall, Delaware County along Reed Road. The utility has brought in 1,100 crews from its sister utilities in the Midwest and South.
And of course, the view from the shore points today, but as we've been mentioning, the storm is now making its way closer to the Philadelphia metro area and to Camden, New Jersey. That is where Action News reporter Kenneth Moten is live tonight. And Kenneth, I understand you're joined by Camden Mayor Dana Redd.
I sure am, Brian. And you know what we love as we deal with this tropical system of Sandy? We love to see a mayor who is not afraid to brave the elements. You came out to us here on Delaware Avenue. I really appreciate you coming out. Obviously, the mayor wants to get a message out to the people. Mayor, I understand you just got an update on Sandy and the conditions here that have been impacting this city and this area. What's the latest?
Well, the latest, we were on a conference call with Governor Christie and the cabinet members and officials across the state of New Jersey, receiving the latest weather report and updates relative to our various communities. And for the city of Camden, you know, we still want to stress the importance of our residents remaining at home, you know, sheltering in place, if you will. Secondly, you know, if sheltering at home is not possible, certainly with friends and or relatives. And thirdly, we have several local shelters that have been established throughout the city of Camden that are available, you know, should residents need to take cover while we're still in the midst of the storm. But the worst is not over, and so we must stress that people remain off the roads as well, so that we can do our jobs. DPW and certainly police and fire and EMS personnel have been doing a fabulous job in the city of Camden, and we just ask that the residents would stay in place while we do our damage assessments.
Mayor, when it comes to this storm, we're talking about a historic storm here and how it impacts your city along the Delaware River. What have you been surprised about as you've dealt with the emergency response and as you've been getting updates throughout the evening?
Well, I don't think anything has really surprised us. We've been prepared for power outages, fallen trees, and the residents have been very helpful in reporting those incidences when they happen. Any live wires, again, we want to stress for residents to stay away from those particular concerns, but to call them in either to 911 and or to our DPW hotline so that we can feed that into our coordinated OEMs. We're working very closely with the county OEM and also which feeds into the state.
And we also have Pat Keating here from Public Works. Mr. Keating, I want to make sure that people see Delaware Avenue here. So you already showed them Delaware Avenue and how the water has receded. I said that was good news earlier. Typically, this is a trouble spot when it comes to flooding, but right now I see the water's receded. Is the water receding on a lot of our trouble spots?
Oh yeah, the tide, the worst tides of this storm was probably at 8 o'clock this evening. So now the tide is receding, and we're very happy that these tides are going out, and some of our flooding will be resided. We don't expect the tide tomorrow to be quite as bad as the two tides today, but we still have to watch for the storm surge and what happens with the rest of the wind and the rain that's coming through this storm.
From a public works standpoint, what's your biggest concern right now?
Our biggest concern is really the wires down in the trees. We have a lot of trees down and there's a lot of wires, and we really have to stress for the folks to be patient. The emergency responders and the utility companies just cannot work in this kind of wind and rain, so they have to literally wait for the storm assessments and after the storm subsides and then allocate the resources as best possible. So as the mayor said, we really hope that folks can shelter in place without venturing out to any dangerous situations, and also to contact us so we can get the information into our OEM and into the hands of the utilities, and we can get the response as quick as possible.
All right, Pat Keating, thank you so much from Public Works. Mayor Dana Redd, any last message for the city of Camden residents who are listening right now on 6 ABC?
Certainly, we want to remind our residents that there will be no trash collection on tomorrow, so please do not sit the trash outside where it can blow around. We will let them know when the trash collection schedule resumes, and we appreciate their cooperation.
All right, thank you, Mayor Dana Redd. I really appreciate it. Yeah, let's take one more look at these folks right here. This is your City of Camden government at work right now. They came to me when we're dealing with hurricane coverage. This is a big help when you're willing to come out to us and give us an update. And I know you're busy at emergency operations, so I'll let you guys get back to it. And we'll be checking in with them throughout the night because they are hunkering down also to make sure that they are on top of any issues and storm-related problems here in the City of Camden. So, guys, I'll send it right back to you. Reporting live here in Camden, Kenneth Moten, Channel 6 Action News.
All right, Kenneth, thank you very much. Beach. And as the night wears on, many of you will lose power, but you still can stay informed and stay safe by following Action News on the radio. Several local radio stations have partnered with 6ABC to broadcast our signal over their airwaves for people who lose power. Mix 106.1 is carrying our signal now until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. 900 a.m. Word, WURD, will broadcast Action News from 7 p.m. tonight until 7 a.m. tomorrow. 92.5 XTU and Wired 96.5 will also carry our coverage as the storm progresses. And we also want you to know that we are simulcasting with PHL 17 at this time.
That's right. And in the event Sandy knocks out your power, we've got live streaming coverage on our iPhone, on iPad, and Android apps. If you could charge those in the car or have a full battery, you can also watch the on-air simulcast through 6abc.com. And we've got a special programming alert for our 6ABC viewers. During our extended coverage of the storm, you can find the network's regular programming on 6ABC's digital channel, that's 6.2, or Comcast Xfinity, channel 790, Verizon Fios 466, RCN in Philadelphia at channel 618, and the Lehigh Valley on channel 1098. And of course, that will continue for the duration of this extended coverage of Sandy.
We leave you now with a live look of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Conditions a lot better than they were before, but of course the big story will be tomorrow, the cleanup. Action News will be right back.
A live look now through Sky 6 HD at the Ben Franklin Bridge. It is there through a rather wet lens right now as what was Hurricane Sandy has made landfall, making its way now to the greater Philadelphia metro region, bringing with it plenty of rain and lots of wind. Brian Taft along with Shirley Allicott as we continue our coverage here tonight.
And Brian, speaking of those winds, Hurricane Sandy was so strong it pulled the facade off an apartment building in New York City. The front of the building at 14th Street and 8th Avenue fell late this afternoon. Miraculously, no one was hurt, but the apartments were exposed, and those residents are now looking for places to stay at this time.
And Sandy's reach has been met by a cold front causing snow, yes, snow in high elevations in West Virginia. A blizzard warning is in effect there. A heavy coating has already fallen. Take a look at those trees, and it's only expected to get worse in the overnight hours. As much as 2 feet of snow could fall in mountain areas there in West Virginia.
Just amazing video and pictures. And of course, Alicia Vitarelli has been at the big board and sharing with us all that's been on social media.
You guys, you have to take a look at this video out of Levittown tonight. A viewer posted this on our Facebook page, and you can see a transformer just completely blowing, popping, the flames there coming out. And you know, a lot of people on Twitter tonight saying to me, it looks like a laser light show out there. The sky is green, it's blue. What's happening? Is this lightning? What is going on? And in fact, we are finding out that a lot of transformers are blowing tonight, and we are getting just unbelievable images coming in. This one here from Maple Shade, New Jersey, right in front of this woman's sister's house. Absolutely frightening. And I'll tell you, the damage as we start to assess it tonight is just unbelievable. This picture here of a down tree, this family here saying it narrowly missed their home. So they lucked out, but certainly not here. Northeast Philadelphia. Take a look at this. A woman leaves her car parked outside. A tree finds its way, just smashing right through that window, the glass completely shattering. Unbelievable to look at as we go through these pictures. A woman here telling me that this creek was flooding today and now is completely overrun this neighborhood here in Delaware County tonight. People have been asking our meteorologists, what are these flashes in the sky? This viewer caught this glimpse of just a flash of blue. And again, we've been telling you it's the transformers. It's very dangerous out there. A lot of live wires. Please do not take it upon yourself to go out and get these pictures if you find yourself in a precarious situation. Here's a reverse shot, by the way, of that tree just completely coming right through this person's car here. Here's a shot from Atlantic City today, which has been completely flooded and inundated with water. It is going to be a while before Atlantic City gets back up on its feet, but there are a lot of prayers and thoughts going there out there tonight. Some people have been saying this. Woman says that she lives in Delaware County. Her husband thinks that the wind smells like the beach. That's how much these winds have been churning up as we have been tracking Sandy all throughout the day, and a lot of the pictures that have been coming in using our hashtag 6ABC Sandy include just unbelievable painted pictures of cities underwater. This is Monmouth Beach, New Jersey. The flood waters just rising everywhere we look. Ventnor, the Back Bays in New Jersey. That's from Eric Rotondo. We thank you for sharing that. Here's a shot from Avalon, New Jersey, just to give you a scope of this Wawa, half completely covered in water. It is going to take a long time for these to retreat here. And this is a similar story, Washington Avenue and Ventnor. This is a CVS store that is, again, almost completely covered in water. Finally, I just want to show you this situation here that Gregory sent also from Washington Avenue in Ventnor, which has seen a really tremendous amount of very dangerous flooding in New Jersey. These docks here are just almost completely swallowed into the earth. That's how much water they are going to have to contend with there. So that's our hashtag on Twitter, 6ABC Sandy. It has become one of the greatest trending topics that we've had tonight. We have shared this evening this storm with you. You have been our partners in storytelling. We cannot thank you enough for that. And a lot of people have been sharing their thoughts with us, saying that you're like our family, and we feel the same way about our viewers. So continue to use this hashtag, and we will continue to take your images and share them with the public tonight. Brian and Charlene.
And Alicia, we've been monitoring that hashtag 6ABC Sandy. It's incredibly encouraging and yet simultaneously discouraging to see how quickly that moves by on my Twitter feed here. But keep those stories coming. We'll share them with you. As long as Sandy's here, we are here for you as well. Our coverage continues right after this.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Sandy. This a live picture now of Rehoboth Beach. You can see that surf still very strong out there, and there's been mass evacuations in Rehoboth, once in a generation flooding, power outages, lots of beach erosion. Still pretty much a bad situation out there that they are still monitoring, and the cleanup is going to be a big problem there as well.
Yeah, just a nasty picture there. And speaking of nasty pictures, take a look at this live picture right now of a skyscraper under construction in New York City. This is on 57th Street in Midtown Manhattan. And if you look through the darkness there, you can see the top of the crane. What was the boom extension of the crane has fallen over in what were high winds earlier tonight. Anecdotally, I was reading about this earlier. The top apartment in that building, which is still under construction, is under contract. It's a 6-bedroom penthouse apartment on the market, or rather sold for $90 million. And so quite a bit of damage to that very expensive apartment under construction in New York City right now. Police officers there have sealed the scene. The hope, of course, is that that boom does not plummet to the earth below it, but you can see it waving in the wind there. Just an incredible, incredible scene, and evidence of the high winds that we are experiencing here in Philadelphia right now.
And our AccuWeather team has been tracking Sandy all day for us. Meteorologist Adam Joseph and Cecily Tynan have the very latest on the storm. Not in the clear just yet, right, guys?
We're not in the clear for a long time. Let me just put it that way. We still have many hours, at least through the 2 o'clock hour, of seeing wind gusts near or above hurricane force. And even throughout the day tomorrow, winds are still going to gust between 30 and 50 miles an hour. So we still have a long way to go, and the trees are so weak right now. The ground is saturated. They've been battered one way with the wind. Now that the storm is moving through, they're going to be battered the opposite way with the wind. So we're going to see much more damage because of the winds to come overnight tonight. Here are some of those inland gusts. Philadelphia now up to 68 miles an hour. Allentown as high as 70 miles an hour. Wrightstown 69, Mount Pocono 66, Trenton so far 63 mile an hour wind gusts, and it's been so strong that on Twitter and Facebook, people are going, I smell the salt air inland and around Philadelphia, and it's because of those strong winds actually taking the air off of the Atlantic and moving it this far inland. In fact, Storm Tracker 6 right now live will show that the banding of rain is still happening at the present time. We're seeing these breaks, but then you get another band of rain, a break, another band of rain. In fact, if we take a look at this one off of the ocean by about 50 or so miles, we are seeing that there's still another very intense band, and this is still going to happen overnight overnight tonight, throughout the night, that we're going to get waves of rain and waves of very intense winds as the eastern half of the storm is still over the Atlantic and has to push through the region. And many power outages continue to pop minute by minute around the region. Facebook and Twitter are lighting up with, "I just lost my power, now I'm listening to you on the radio." Storm Tracker 6 Live 3D. This storm is so massive in size. We're seeing rain in northern parts of New Hampshire, Vermont, in parts of northern Maine, also going all the way back to Chicago, and you see snow in West Virginia. The storm is dumping 1 to 2 to 3 feet of snow in West Virginia with thunder snow going on. But even though the radar cuts off here, you can't get the radar data out more than about 50 miles or so from the ocean line, but there is still much more to come in the eastern half of the storm. So flood concerns with this on the opposite of the wind. Major to moderate flooding is occurring tonight on the Brandywine Creek, the Chester Creek, the Christina River in Newcastle County, and also the Red Clay Creek. Delaware has been hit very hard with the rainfall. And in fact, if we bring this in, this is a hydrograph that shows a period of time. On the bottom here, you see the time at 9 o'clock on Friday, and it goes forward into the future. This is for the East Branch, Brandywine Creek below Downingtown. Right now, we are at 10.8 feet. Major flood stage is 11 feet. It's expected to go to major flood at 12.28 feet. That is roughly a foot to a foot and a half above the major stage. That happens around 1 o'clock, and then it will dramatically drop off and go below flood stage right around 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So there are rivers that are going to go into moderate to major flooding overnight tonight, and we'll see them recede during the day tomorrow. So Cecily, that is one part of the story, is the flooding. It's not as bad, the inland flooding, as we thought, but the winds are exactly what we thought, and that side to this storm is going to create a lot of damage.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people were reporting that the winds are knocking down the trees, the transformers are blowing, a lot of power outages. Donna Stewart just tweeted me moments ago from Percy and said the winds actually sound like a 747 landing, and we're actually hearing that in our studio. So the winds really will be the biggest part of the story as we head through the overnight hours. Currently in Philadelphia, we have a wind gust of 44 miles per hour. Trenton right now 56, Reading 38 miles per hour. The winds have definitely subsided across South Jersey. Atlantic City Airport right now 22-mile-an-hour winds, but Dover reporting a wind gust of 49 miles per hour. So the winds will continue to be quite strong and gusty up till about 2 o'clock in the morning. This is when we'll see some wind gusts still around 50 miles per hour or so, but as we head through the overnight hours, they will gradually diminish. By 7:30 in the morning, some areas, Philadelphia, the winds finally dropping below that 40-mile-an-hour threshold. And as we head through the day tomorrow, it'll be a breezy day. We will see some showers on and off, but by 7 o'clock tomorrow night, the winds really won't be a big factor. The wind gusts will be down to about 25 to 30 miles per hour. So future trackers showing around 11 o'clock tonight. This is actually the eye of the storm. Will be moving through Philadelphia, and you see how we will get some of those rain bands. We will get occasional heavy rain bands, but they won't be as fast and furious as earlier during the day when we got the sheets of the torrential rain. But as you get this eye beginning to move across Center City, this is really when we'll begin to see the strongest winds. So the winds will be a factor again until the early morning hours. 7 o'clock in the morning, we'll see some pockets of rain, but not quite as intense. And then through the day, some spotty showers tomorrow, lots of clouds and some windy conditions, but by 8 o'clock, really no substantial rain across the region. So this is really what sums it up, what to expect now that landfall has happened. We'll have strong winds until about 2 o'clock in the morning, until the center of that storm system pushes out of our region. It will remain gusty through the day tomorrow. As far as additional rain, not all that much. We're looking at about a ½ inch to an inch north and east of Philadelphia. South and west, you could get an additional 1 to 3 inches of rain. But again, the rainfall right now is not the big story. It will continue to be the winds, and unfortunately, this will cause more power outages, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Cecily. Let's head back over to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, where we find Chad Perdelli. And Chad, we showed a live picture just not too long ago of a lot of rough surf and high waves. Still a situation out there, right?
Yeah, Charlene, the surface certainly rough. It's sort of ebbing and flowing. I'd say the rain right now is a light to a drizzle. You get a little heavier rain at moments, and still very gusty conditions out here. Some sustained winds at during moments of the evening, but you can see that surf very rough. That the waves still pounding the beach here. I don't know if you can tell, but that fence that was built there right in front of the sand dune, that's been washed away. Earlier today, we saw those waves making it onto the boardwalk. The debris line is right up here to the steps of the Atlantic Sands where we're going live from. So it was really bad earlier today. Conditions obviously improving as this storm begins to make its way inland. We're sort of on the southwest corner of this now tropical storm, so the rain has really weakened, and that is certainly some good news for Rehoboth Beach and the surrounding areas. I mean, this area had roughly 6 inches of rain over the past 24 to 36 hours. This area needed some relief from that drenching rain. We were out and about earlier in the day. We saw some minor flooding, basically Route 1 between Dewey Beach and Bethany Beach. It's shut down. It has some flooding there. We saw some minor flooding a little bit south of us on a few roads right along the beach, but nothing major at this point. But obviously, like Cecily and Adam were talking about, this is now turning into a wind event, and with these gusty conditions, you can certainly get some wind damage in a hurry. We haven't seen a whole lot of wind damage. I touched base with some state officials about an hour ago to get an assessment on the state of Delaware. An official told me basically at this point there are about 24 roads and bridges in Delaware that are shut down for localized flooding, but she told me it is manageable at this point. About 38,000 customers at last check. That's obviously an evolving number without power in Delaware, but at this point no major flooding, no major wind damage, at least from what we can tell. Obviously, as daylight happens and we get through the next few hours into the morning, there could be more damage, and we get a further assessment later on tomorrow. But at this point, state officials certainly breathing a slight sigh of relief. Conditions improving. It looks like they took on the brunt of this storm and came out okay. I'm live in Rehoboth. Chad Perdelli, Channel 6 Action News. Back to you guys.
All right, Chad, thank you very much. Of course, daylight will tell the entirety of this story tomorrow, and of course we'll be here to bring that story to you. As we leave you now, briefly, a live look outside via Sky 6 HD at a very dark Interstate 95, and this reminder for you that 95, 676, 76, 476, and Route 1 in Pennsylvania have all been closed by order of Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett. That's in addition to all of the Delaware River Port Authority bridges into and out of the city, and of course many more closures at other parts of our viewing area. Our coverage continues here tonight right after this.
Welcome back. A live look at the Philadelphia International Airport. If you just take a look at this, a very quiet, gloomy scene out there, almost scary. No flights coming in or out, and as we've been reporting, Philadelphia is shutting down tomorrow, so that will likely continue. No clue as to when those flights will resume again.
Sure, and just by way of an important distinction, the airport will remain open, but several of the airlines have made the individual choice not to take off or land tomorrow. U.S. Airways, most notable among them. Of course, the most significant presence at that airport is from U.S. Airways. They've announced now that they will not have flights, including tomorrow. So the travel impact from what was Hurricane Sandy, not behind us, not by a long shot here. Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Taff alongside Shirley and Alicott as we continue our coverage with a live with this videotape. Earlier tonight, Sandy's wide-reaching effects being felt off the coast of Massachusetts. This is video of the massive storm churning up the Atlantic Ocean off Martha's Vineyard. You can see just how strong those winds are blowing as those waves crash ashore there.
And the Coast Guard braved 18-foot seas of Hurricane Sandy to make a rescue today off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. 14 people were rescued from the tall ship HMS Bounty after it began taking on water. One person is missing tonight. Another has been pulled from the water unresponsive. The ship was made for the 1962 Marlon Brando movie Mutiny on the Bounty, but was used more recently for the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Just an incredible ship there to see that too, so quite a loss there. Now we've got some updated power outage numbers for you. The majority of people without power right now as everybody expected are in South Jersey. Atlantic City Electric reporting now that more than 125,000 customers are in the dark right now. That's mostly in Atlantic County.
PSE&G now says 400,000 are now without power, and Delmarva says over 35,000 customers are in the dark.
PECO telling us now they've got 90,000 outages. The bulk of those are in Bucks County, but as everybody's been telling you here, we expect those numbers will be going up as the night goes on, especially in that area served by PECO, because the winds in the greater Philadelphia metro area will be substantial throughout much of the night into the morning here.
2.8 million people up and down the East Coast now without power.
Yes.
So that's a lot of people.
Certainly is.
Big situation.
And so we should very quickly remind you that you can also listen to us on several radio stations and, of course, on 6abc.com as well. So if you're one of those who's lost power, you're not without Action News.
Let's switch live now to Nora Mushanek. She is at a shelter in Stafford Township, New Jersey, with the very latest from there. Nora?
Hi there, guys. We're at Southern Regional High School, which is the shelter for folks who live right here on the mainland, and also the folks who were evacuated from Long Beach Island. And there are plenty of them here. There are an estimated around 400 people here right now. Things are calming down for the night, but a lot of them, as you see, are just coming out for a breather. And it's almost like you wouldn't want to be out here, though, because the weather has turned on us. It was calm a little while ago, and now the winds are blowing. We just had a chair blow over. It's getting nasty all over again, and we've got that wind-driven rain. But as I said, a number of people, a lot of stories here tonight about folks who have had to come to this shelter. This is Karen. Karen, tell me your story. What are you doing here? How'd you have to get?
Well, we had mandatory evacuation, and we had to come here so that we could get out of the rain and the wind because it got awfully windy and the water's up high.
And you okay being here? You're getting taken care of?
Oh, yeah, no problem. We had lunch, dinner, no problem.
And that's what counts. And you've got electricity.
And we've got electricity and a place to sleep.
Right. It's a beautiful thing, right?
Yes.
Thanks for talking with us, Karen. Stay safe. And that's the story for a lot of people here. I think I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, there was a couple who are here tonight who they have never, ever evacuated before. They've lived through all these storms, over the decades, but they've always stayed on Long Beach Island. Today is the day that they got out. It's that bad. It was that bad on the island. And, we drove through that. We drove through the floodwaters, up Ocean Avenue, the boulevard, looking at things going on there today, and it was unbelievable. There's going to be an unbelievable mess to clean up after this is over with, because the place is littered with debris and, garbage cans and fences and everything you can imagine. The place really is a mess. So everybody is hunkered down here, happy to have a place to be in this awful, awful storm, and we'll stay with it and keep you up to date with everything that's going on here at Southern Regional High School. For now, I'm Nora Mushanek, live in Stafford Township. Back to you guys.
All right, Nora, thank you so much. And you just heard what Nora said. A lot of people evacuating.
Yep.
First time ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a rare situation. We had this Hurricane Irene last year, and for many people, that was the first time they'd experienced any sort of evacuation. You never think you're going to do it twice within the span of just more than a year, and yet here we find ourselves doing just that. Nora's such a trooper today, working very hard all day long in a lot of very difficult elements out there. We know many of you are dealing with those elements. Live look outside right now through Sky 6. We'll show you, we believe, the Penn's Landing area. There it is. Nope, that's the airport. And we looked at that just a couple of minutes ago, and the picture remains the same. Wind blowing, rain falling. Blame Sandy. We'll be right back. Our coverage continues here on 6ABC. Sandy has slammed ashore and is now making her way inland at this very early hour. This is a live picture now from Atlantic City on Sky 6 HD, where the storm made landfall at about 6 o'clock last night. Pardon me, the boardwalk has taken a brutal beating there. Roads are flooded, and it'll still be several hours before we get a true sense of all the damage done.
A live look now at Philadelphia International, showing another part of the story, travel troubles. Thousands of flights have already been canceled for today, and normal operations are not expected to resume until tomorrow at the very earliest. Meantime, Atlantic City Airport is closed, though officials hope to open back up later on. And major airports, Newark, LaGuardia, and JFK were also shut down last night.
As for travel on the major roads this morning, the Ben Franklin Bridge is one of 4 Delaware River Port Authority bridges closed at this hour. The Walt Whitman, Commodore Barry, and Betsy Ross are also shut down right now. All 4 of them are expected to reopen in just about 3 hours from now at 4 o'clock in the morning. However, motorcycles and heavy trucks will still be banned when those bridges open.
Government officials want you to stay off the roads, and they're hoping that you'll get the point with the closure of the main highways in and around Philadelphia. You are looking at one of them, I-76, the Schuylkill Expressway, just a utility truck passing through there.
And all Philadelphia public and archdiocesan schools are closed today. Today being Tuesday. In addition to the scrolling list on the bottom of the screen, we have posted the complete list on 6abc.com, and we do bid you a good Tuesday morning. I'm Brian Taff along with Shirley Allicott. We want to bring you the very latest numbers on power outages today.
Yes, we do. PSE&G now says more than 1 million customers are now without power, and Atlantic City Electric is reporting more than 211,000 customers are without power, and that is mostly in Atlantic County.
Delmarva says more than 78,000 customers are in the dark right now, and Pico currently has 570,000 outages, the bulk of those in Bucks and Montgomery County.
Of course, our coverage of Hurricane Sandy is continuing right now. Our AccuWeather team has been tracking Sandy all day for us. Meteorologist Melissa McGee has the very latest on the storm and any flooding concerns as well, right, Melissa?
That's right, Shirlene and Brian. We're definitely going to have flooding concerns, especially to the south and west of where that center of the storm system moved inland. But the storm system was very historic, one in the sense that the essential direction of the storm system, it was quite uncharacteristic. So we'll talk about some of the statistics with Sandy. It made landfall around 8 o'clock Monday night near Atlantic City, and the maximum sustained winds with the storm 80 miles per hour, and the pressure of the storm 946 millibars. So the lower the pressure, what you need to know what that means, the stronger the storm, the stronger the potential wind gusts and the high wind gusts, and the stronger that storm surge as well. This is the strongest storm we've seen that's hit New Jersey since 1903. We'll talk about where this storm system is right now. Storm Tracker 6 Live 3D showing you there is some light rain right now for Philadelphia, but still some of those bands from the southeast with the direction still starting to work their way into portions of southern section of New Jersey and down through our coastline. But the heaviest of that rainfall for the most part to the west and southwest of the center of the storm. So we'll talk about some of the rain we've picked up so far across the region. Well, in Wildwood, 11.62 inches of rain. West Cape May, 9.37 inches. Rehoboth in Delaware, 8 inches, 7 inches in Cedarville, and Estelle Mariner, 6.57 inches of rainfall. The other story as we progress through the rest of tonight, there's one issue when you talk about the rain and where the heaviest of that rain fell. It was to the south and west of the center, but the winds are going to be an issue for everyone across our region, even as we progress through the overnight hours. So looking at current wind gusts across the area, 38 miles per hour there in Center City. We have a gust in Atlantic City right now of 44 miles per hour, 40 mile per hour wind gusts in Dover. 44 up in the Poconos, Allentown and Reading. Looks a little bare right here. Power was knocked out in these locations, so right now these stations are not reporting current wind gusts. We have a gust right now in Trenton of 35 miles per hour, so the gusts will remain elevated through the rest of the overnight hours. In fact, the high wind warning will stay up until 9 o'clock this morning, as we could find gusts across much of our region up to 75 miles per hour. As we take a look at the storm timeline and what you can expect over the next 24 hours, well, now right through 8 a.m. we're dealing with those strong gusty winds. Again, I did say the winds will be elevated for the rest of the overnight hours, but even as we progress through our Tuesday day, we're looking at gusts and winds anywhere from about 30 to 50 miles per hour. And yes, we're going to be in and out of those bands of rain as well. Once we get into 8 a.m. Tuesday right through 8 p.m. on Tuesday, we're dealing with windy conditions and showers. So as Sandy works its way into our region and continues to linger across the area, it's not going to move off to the north and east anytime soon. So we're going to be in and out of the wet weather. And of course, we're dealing with those gusty winds for the rest of tonight. That's going to be a big issue. And I think as everyone wakes up, later on this morning, there's going to be a big issue as we assess the damage all across the Delaware and Lehigh Valleys, especially across our coastal communities. So that's the very latest on this storm system that was quite uncharacteristic but historic across the region. Brian and Shirlene, I'll send it back over your way.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. And much like our weather team, our reporters out in the field have been working around the clock. And we've got a couple of phoners coming up for us right now.
Yeah, let's start with Amy Buckman joining us on the phone now. And Amy, I understand you are in West Atlantic City this morning. What's the scene right now as best you can see?
Well, we're on the Black Horse Pike, and just to give you a little backstory here, as they say, our photographer Bob McCune and I were on the air till about 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and then we went back to the private home where we had been staying in Ventnor, New Jersey, only to find that the street that the house was on had already started to flood and the power was out at the house. So we made the decision at that point to try to leave Absecon Island and get back onto the mainland where Bob actually lives so that we could stay at his house. And I got to tell you, that was quite the adventurous drive, trying to get off of Absecon Island back to the mainland. There was, no cars on the Atlantic Expressway or the Garden State Parkway. Besides that, the rain was coming down torrentially. The winds were kind of moving the van from side to side a little bit. But we did make it safely, and Bob had electricity at his house, so that was all good. But throughout the late afternoon and evening, as the winds started to build and the rain started to build, he lives on a lake, and that lake started encroaching almost to his back door. So that was a little nerve-wracking. And then we got up around 11 this evening to try to make our way back into Atlantic City, because I know from some of the pictures I've been seeing that the flooding on Absecon Island at this point is just unbelievable. However, easier said than done. We've tried to get onto the Garden State Parkway and the Expressway. The ramps are all blocked. There are emergency personnel blocking those roadways. So right now we're attempting to get back onto the island via the Black Horse Pike, but we understand that this roadway is flooded as well. And in fact, the waters actually went up over the median strip of the Black Horse Pike, although they have receded a little bit at this point. So we're going to see how far we can go. No guarantees. But I am looking at something that we will shoot pictures of right now and get to you guys as quickly as we can. For some reason, there is a houseboat on the side of the road. I'm not sure where exactly it washed up from or how it got here, and there's no one around for us to talk to, but clearly it should not be sitting in an intersection, yet that's what we're seeing. And so that gives you an idea of the force of the rain and the winds and what's been going on here along the Jersey Shore. The only good news right now is it's really not raining that hard, and this is the first time we've seen a real let-up in the precipitation, although, as Melissa was saying, the winds are continuing to gust. So we're seeing the signs kind of flapping around a little bit. So that's what we're doing right now. We will keep you posted as we sort of continue this adventure of trying to get back onto Absecon Island to get more information about the situation in Atlantic City, in Margate, in Ventnor, and Longport. We'll keep you posted as we go. Live on the phone, I'm Amy Buckman, Channel 6 Action News.
All right, thank you very much, Amy. We have another phoner coming in next. That one is from Walter Perez. He is in Levittown, Bucks County right now. So he too is waking up to see, what damage is out there as well, just like Amy. And Walter, are you with us right now?
I'm here.
All right. So what's the situation out there? Give us the latest.
Good morning, guys. I got to tell you, having driven the length of Bucks County to get here to Levittown, there are not many communities, at least along the stretch that I traveled, where there is power. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's hardly a light to be seen. I didn't see any street lights that were working. I didn't see any lights that were working for huge stretches. And there are just a couple of, communities here and there where there were some lights, and I couldn't tell if it's because they had generators running or if the power was actually up. But for the most part, Bucks County at this time in the morning is in darkness. And the other thing about it, driving over here, it was like driving through a war zone. I mean, trees down, leaves everywhere, lights out, deer running across the street, police cars with their lights on. It was absolutely surreal. And it's so dark because there were no lights pretty much the entire distance that I drove here, that it was difficult getting my way around, including, and you throw in the road closures, and they made it that much more difficult. Now, the reason I ended up in Levittown this morning, we got a call a few hours ago from a woman who lives here. I'm on Long Hill Drive in Levittown, and she said, you've got to see all the downed trees in my neighborhood. And it really sticks out. I've been trying to take a photograph of it. I'm still waiting for my crew. We're having some difficulty with the equipment because every place has the power out and they couldn't charge the batteries, so we're having some equipment issues there. But I really can't wait to show you the pictures of what I'm looking at here in Levittown. This entire neighborhood on Long Hill Road, these huge trees, like dominoes, it seems, fell down. It's almost as if this one specific area got a really strong burst of wind at one point, and everything seemed to have come down at one point. Giant root balls, I mean, taller than me, all over the road. I counted at least 7 of these gigantic trees that are toppled, blocking off roads and blocking off the community from one side of the community to the other. So it's really quite a scene here. And to echo what Amy had just said, it seems like the rain has tapered off, but still very, very windy. And if anyone is even thinking about going out and driving in this, think twice. It's a very treacherous situation to try and get around. Even assuming you can get to the place where you want to safely, getting there is the issue, as I mentioned, because of all the road closures and blockages from trees and flooding in different areas. So it's a real challenge getting around. And as soon as we can, we'll set up the live shot and show you what we have here in Levittown, because it's quite a scene. Reporting live at Levittown, Walter Perez, Channel 6 Action News.
And, you know, Walter was mentioning that some of the trees that were down were bigger than him. And for those of you who are used to seeing Walter only from here up, we should tell you he's a pretty tall guy. And so there's a big trees out there. And Walter, also, if you're still with us on the line, the power outage numbers from PECO do substantiate what he was saying. You know, several 100,000 PECO customers are out, and they were saying the bulk of those customers were in Bucks County. And we know that anecdotally, you know, what Cecily and Adam and Melissa have been saying all night long should hold true. The south, you know, the northern part of the storm, just above the storm, was supposed to get the most significant wind action, and as the storm made its way west onto land and then up, you know, Bucks County was just getting slammed from that wind, and it's not surprising at all that that's seen quite a bit of damage tonight. Trees down, powered out very, very significantly. And along those lines, some video for you now, because downed trees have been a big problem all around the region, not just in Bucks County. In fact, we got some video earlier tonight of a tree that fell on top of a man's leg in Burlington County, New Jersey. He is expected to be okay. But a very different but equally scary scene in Pennsylvania, where another tree slammed onto power lines and lands down, creating some sparks. Emergency crews prevented that small fire you see there from spreading and getting any more significant. Welcome back and good morning to you, and we thank you for sticking with us tonight as we continue our coverage of what was Hurricane Sandy, but still is a menace named Sandy. And I'm Brian Taff, along with Shirley Allicott, and Melissa McGee is with us tonight as well, or should I say this morning. Right. Good morning to you.
And to you.
Let's talk a bit about where this storm is right now. You know, for so many days we watched it churn off the coast, and it's now made landfall. We know that. We've covered that well. We believe it's passed through Philadelphia. So where is it right now? What's it look like?
Well, right now, Brian and Shirlene, that storm system is still kind of sitting and slowly churning over the state of Pennsylvania. So what we're dealing with right now is still the storm and what's left of that storm moving in. So you have a southeasterly wind for the most part across much of Philadelphia, which is triggering some of those gusty winds. And we're still getting some rain right now moving across coastal sections of New Jersey. As far as finding the heavy rain right now, I don't think that's going to take place. I think we're going to be in and out of some bands, some of which could be moderate to on the light side. But as far as finding that heavy rainfall, all of that has shifted now to the west-southwest, and it will continue to do so for the rest of tonight. So we were talking about earlier how once the storm system came up, it moved in and it came on shore a little further south than initially anticipated. So because of that, all of the heavy rain, all of that severe flooding was even further south and west of where we were thinking it was going to be. Having said that, however, there's going to be a big issue even as we progress through the rest of the overnight hours and even into Tuesday morning with the winds, because we were saying how massive and how large the storm system was even before it made landfall. The pressure was so low, meaning the storm was so so strong and so intense. So because of that, the wind field and how massive it is going to affect a large area. Speaking to the winds, we have winds gusting out of the southeast, and they're going to turn over in another direction. So the ground is already saturated. It's soaked in many locations. Then you have these gusty winds, which will knock down more power lines across the region. Just think about this. It's a beautiful time of year because of leaf peeping and the fall foliage. You have trees that could potentially clog drains that could then back up other problems. So that's where the storm is currently. And even though the storm system did move in a little faster than anticipated, the storm system is so broad, it's going to sit and spin over our region or over the mid-Atlantic region for some time. So even though the heaviest of that rain, Charlene, is moving out, the showers will linger for some days now.
So to echo like Walter's sentiments, I mean, if you think we're in the clear, we are so not in the clear.
Oh, no.
Not until tomorrow morning, like really, like later on today.
Right. We're not in the clear because, as we've been saying all last night and early this morning, that when we wake up and you have daylight and you assess the damage across the region, especially across coastal communities, because you were dealing with the issue with the storm coming in, and then thereafter you had the tidal flooding because of the astronomical high tide. So all of those issues combined, there's really going to be an altering of the coastline from Atlantic City on south and westward.
You know, that's why I think, you know, we make so much of the fact that here we are in the middle of the night. It's really hard to see and gauge the level of damage. We saw tremendous images earlier tonight, yesterday from Atlantic City and so many shore points. And that didn't end there, but it just so happened that the storm came ashore as nightfall was coming. And so we really haven't gotten a really great, I don't think, sense of the scope of the damage. Do you think that, you know, we certainly already know the damage from this storm will be historic, on the Jersey Shore and down in Delaware, and for all the reasons that you just said. What do you think we'll see inland? I mean, are we talking about damage of historic proportions?
I think that we're going to have issues as far as historic portions. I think all of that is going to be along the coastline. For inland locations, I don't think you're going to have an issue with the severe flooding because of the way the storm came ashore, because it came in a little farther south near Atlantic City, near Summers Point. So all of that severe flooding was south and west of that point. So we're not going to have an issue with that flooding. I think it's going to be historic in terms of the damage and the cleanup, and just in the sense, the sheer size of the storm and how uncharacteristic it was when it did move in. I mean, there are a lot of ingredients that came together that do not typically come together, and we had a monster, colossal beast out there.
I mean, snow in Virginia.
Isn't that something how, you know, we went from a hurricane that we've been tracking for days now, a warm core system, so you have a tropical system that's just paralleling the coast, and then it runs perpendicular to the coast, then it transforms into a hybrid system. So now it goes from a warm core system where you have warmer wind in the middle of the storm than it is on the outside, then it transitions to a cold core system. So right now we're essentially talking about a nor'easter that moved into our region. But because it is a nor'easter and because it was able to drain down colder air from the north once it did move inland, that's why you get that snow on the backside in some of the mountain regions of the Virginians.
Glad we didn't get it.
Oh, aren't we glad, because it would have been a completely different beast by then.
Well, you know, we talk about the historic nature of the storm, listening to so many of the conversations between meteorologists here tonight, yourself included. The notion that we've not seen a storm of this size since the early 1900s, and recognizing that most people who live in this area have never ever seen anything like this, is just an incredible thing to try to wrap your head around.
It really is, and we were talking about that earlier on the air, just because of the way it came up, the way so many ingredients came together. It just typically does not happen, because without getting too technical, when we track storm systems, they move from west to east across the United States, and there are steering winds in the atmosphere that help them move along. So we were having those west to east movements, but this storm system came up, and it came up in a way so that it had nowhere to go but move into our direction. So there was a lot of lift and there was a lot of pull to help the storm system move on in. And because it moved perpendicular to our coast rather than parallel, we got a big brunt of that storm system as far as dealing with that storm surge moving inland and all of that flooding that you're going to have along the Jersey coastline as well.
What is the storm now? I mean, we keep referring to it as Hurricane Sandy because that's what we've been calling it for days. It's not a hurricane anymore.
No, it is not.
Is it a post-tropical storm?
It's a post-tropical storm, so it's losing its tropical characteristics. Once it moved on land, it lost a lot of its tropical characteristics. That's just going to happen because you're interacting with land now, so you're interacting with friction. So you no longer have that warm Gulf Stream to fuel the storm.
Right.
So as it moves inland, you're dealing with wind wrapping in behind that, and it's colder wind. So it's a post-tropical system, and essentially you could just call it a big nor'easter, essentially moving across our region.
I like what you called it before, but a monster colosso storm?
Beast. A monster colossal beast.
Which is the technical term.
It's totally technical, and it's just going to linger for some time as far as the residual effects with the storm.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll see you very shortly.
I'm sure you will.
I know we will. Thanks, Melissa. Action News reporter Annie McCormick filed this report just a short time ago from Ocean City, New Jersey.
We're at Laurel and Ocean Roads in Ocean City, New Jersey, and Sandy is definitely making her presence known. In fact, the wind gusts are picking up at least between 50 to 60 miles per hour. You can tell that the street we're on is not actually that flooded. This is a higher area of Ocean City, New Jersey. Even though most of the city actually does have significant flooding problems, this one is relatively okay. You can also tell it's very dark. That's because the power went out as those wind gusts did pick up. Right now, we're actually staying at one of our photographer, Amy Reinholtz's house, and her power did go out there. The reason why we positioned ourselves here and on this side of the city is because we needed to be in a safe area. We needed to be where we were staying. There are concerns because the flooding is so bad in other parts of the city that if we parked our live truck over there and tried to go live, we wouldn't be able to get back over to this side of town because the floodwaters have raised so high. In fact, they're still so high that they aren't letting anybody off the island. In fact, that's why they made those evacuations up until Sunday, and some of the evacuations in fact did go into today, but only with help of emergency personnel. But that's what it feels like right now here. The rain is light, not that heavy rain that we had throughout the day, but the wind gusts are picking up and we feel like they're only going to get stronger. For now, we're in Ocean City, New Jersey. Annie McCormick, Channel 6 Action News.
And some of the heaviest rains in our region, well, let's go to this first. Let's go to this houseboat in West Atlantic City. This is something that Amy Buckman mentioned in her phoner. This is a picture from Twitter, and it's amazing. It's on the street.
Yeah, on the street. There is no body of water nearby. This, from the description that Amy gave us before while on the phone, again, she was on the Black Horse Pike when she called in and told us about this, and then she tweeted this picture out a short time after that phone conversation ended. And so this is the scene in, well, nearby the Black Horse Pike nearby Atlantic City this morning. A houseboat, certainly where it should not be.
Homes turning into boats.
Yeah.
Houseboats.
You got it.
Something else.
Oh boy. All right. Well, some of the heaviest rains in our region fell in Delaware earlier tonight, and for the same reasons that the heavier winds were to the north of the storm, the heavier rain to the south. That is where Action News reporter Chad Perdelli filed this report from Rehoboth Beach earlier this morning.
Here in Rehoboth Beach, conditions steadily improving. Of course, the Atlantic is still roaring and still very powerful, but look, most of the rain has stopped. Still gusty conditions out here. Minimal flooding here in Rehoboth, a couple of streets just south of us here on the boardwalk. The worst flooding is basically in Dewey Beach on Route 1 between Dewey and Bethany, but right now it looks minimal at this point. State officials tell me that about 24 roads and bridges did suffer localized flooding. I'm told that flooding is manageable. Obviously, a lot of people without power, and that will continue to evolve as these gusty conditions continue. But it looks like Sandy hit the Delaware beaches, and it came out okay. In Rehoboth, Chad Perdelli, Channel 6 Action News.
All right, quick break, and we will be right back with the latest on Sandy.
Welcome back and good morning to you, though if we're being totally honest, we wish it was a bit better today as we continue to survey the area and the greater area in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. This is a live picture right now of the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City, and that's pretty much the only light in the picture. I don't know if we can go back to that picture, guys, for just a second. Well, it appears we maybe have lost that. massive flooding in New York City
Yes,
tonight.
power outages, flooding, the big story out there.
Absolutely.
Close to 2 million people in the dark in New York. So just like we got a wallop, they pretty much got slammed by Sandy as well. We're now taking a look at Philadelphia International. You can see the camera's pretty waterlogged, so you can barely see anything. But what we do see is very eerie. No activity whatsoever at this hour at the airport.
And it will remain that way tomorrow at least. We know that for now. The Philadelphia International Airport will be open tomorrow morning, but you won't see much in the way of flying into or out of it. U.S. Airways has canceled all flights out of the airport tomorrow. That, of course, the biggest carrier out of the airport based there. And several other airlines have followed suit, though not all of them have canceled everything just yet. They may make that decision in the minutes that precede that flight, but safe bet, if you've got a flight into or out of PHL tomorrow, likely not going to happen.
In the meantime, Melissa McGee, she is standing by with the very latest on Sandy's track, where she is right now, and some of the flooding concerns and other concerns we're going to have because of her destruction.
Yeah, that's right, Charlene and Brian. One thing is pretty interesting is that Sandy made landfall at 8 o'clock Monday night, and the pressure with the storm system was very low. As we look at the pressure right now, it's at 952 millibars. What does that mean? Well, the pressure is starting to rise, which means the storm is starting to weaken, but the wind sustained right now still pretty strong at 75 miles per hour. Here's the storm system right now, and you can see the center of that storm system right in the middle of the state of Pennsylvania, and we are still dealing with some pretty moderate rainfall across areas, and this will continue, but over time this storm system will spread out across much of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Let's talk about some of the hurricane gusts we picked up with this storm. Surf City, 89 mile per hour wind gusts. Dennisville, we had a gust of 81 miles per hour. Allentown, your gust 81 miles per hour. We had a strong gust in Bensalem up to 76 miles per hour, and Category 1 hurricane strength gust there in Harvey Cedars. The gusts will still be an issue even as we progress through the rest of the overnight hours and as you wake up tomorrow morning. So the high wind warning is still up for the heart of our region. This will stay up until 9 o'clock in the morning, gusting up to 75 miles per hour. But as the day progresses and as we get into the afternoon hours, the winds will slacken a little bit. So they're elevated right now. They will die off just a little bit, but when I say a little bit, we're still calling for winds anywhere from 30 to 50 miles per hour. So they will start to weaken as the day progresses, but they won't be as strong as they are currently. We'll look at Storm Tracker 6 Live HD, and you can see where some of that rain is right now. Light to moderate for the most part in Philadelphia, but again, all of that heavy rain we were picking up with Sandy before it moved inland and what was coming in on the back side of it, it's shifting off to the west-southwest, and the steadiest will continue to shift to the west-southwest once we get into Tuesday during the daylight hours. But for the most part, we still have some wet weather across the region, and we're going to be in and out of this for the rest of tomorrow as well. Flood warning for the most part up for much of our region, just to the south of Allentown and areas to the south and west. And the major concern is to the south and west. We've been talking about how whenever a storm system like this makes landfall, you're always going to get that heavy rain and the flooding issues to the south and west of the center. So that's where the concern will be as it relates to some of our creeks and some of our streams. So minor to moderate issues right now for the Brandywine Creek at Downingtown, Chester Creek, Christiana River, and the Red Clay Creek as well. These are going to be creeks that we'll be watching even as we get into Tuesday. Future Tracker rain has you covered. As you wake up tomorrow morning, again, we just have some light rainfall across the region. The heaviest once again shifting off to the west-southwest. As we progress through the rest of our day, you can see once we get into 2 o'clock in the afternoon, pockets of showers, mostly cloudy conditions, and again, those windy conditions will start to weaken as the day wears on. Here's your day planner. 8 o'clock in the morning, 50 degrees with those showers that will persist. By the time we get into noontime, 53 degrees, cloudy, maybe a peak of sun and some showers around. The winds will still be blustery, but once we get into the evening hours, the winds will start to die off with the temperature around 53 degrees. Here's the track with Sandy and what we are expecting for the the rest of today and even as we get into the week ahead. As the storm system pulls away, we were saying how those showers are going to linger. Here's part of the reason why. Finally, Sandy will get picked up from the jet stream and go in the general direction that these storm systems start to go. So we'll start to lift on off to the north and east, but even by Thursday, you can see a good chunk of our region still dealing with the after effects of Sandy. So that's the very latest on Sandy. Again, I think you're going to have the issues with the flooding, mainly to the south and west of the center. The winds will be an issue for the rest of tonight, even as we get into tomorrow. And the big question is assessing the damage once daylight hits. What does that coastline look across coastal sections of New Jersey? That's going to be key because the storm system was historic in so many ways. We've not seen anything like this, guys.
That is the truth. Thank you so much, Melissa. And now let's go live to Catherine Scott. Imagine it's another day. It's a new day, and Catherine Scott is back out in the field. This time she is in East Falls. It's like we just saw you, Catherine. Amazing.
I know, it's like Groundhog Day, but we're back and we're in East Falls today, and so far it's actually not looking too bad here in East Falls. We're on Kelly Drive by Midvale, and so far we haven't heard any major reports of flooding. You can see that by Midvale there is a blockade up. There are police vehicles stationed out here, but one officer did tell me earlier that he hasn't heard of any reports at this hour of flooding along Kelly Drive. So that's good news right there. However, that doesn't mean we're out of the clear just yet. Sometimes the storm comes first, the flooding comes later. Of course, it's still raining out here, so this is a situation we have to keep an eye on. But as you take a look out on Kelly Drive, you can see that it actually is looking quite clear. The surface is wet. There are some wet leaves, but no major debris, at least in this area that we see. And if you look at the Schuylkill River right on the other side of that wall, you can see that the water levels are high, though. The current is moving at a pretty good clip. So again, this is a situation that they have to monitor. This is a flood-prone area. We often do see flooding after storms here along Kelly Drive right by Midvale. Another flood-prone area we were at not too long ago was Main Street, Manayunk. We walked along Main Street earlier, and again, there was some debris in the street, but another area that traditionally gets pretty heavy flooding was looking okay so far early this morning, but that was something that, of course, that we were checking on yesterday because it is an area that is often underwater. The mayor was speaking last night saying, I guess it's last night now, a couple hours ago, was saying, of course, even though it looks like the worst of the storm has passed, don't go outside, shelter in place, everybody, because it's nightfall. There were a lot of down power lines, down trees, and this is something that, of course, you have to keep an eye on because you don't know. The visibility is poor, so it's difficult to see where you are. So be sure to stay inside, everybody, until they can get out this morning and take a look, assess the damage in the area. But again, let's go to Mayor Nutter earlier this evening.
That is too dangerous a combination to have further activity or movement out on our streets. And so at this point in the evening, we are strongly recommending stay wherever you are, and then we'll try to deal with any further movement in the daylight and in the morning.
Okay, so again, the situation we're monitoring here with the flooding, of course, stay with Action News, but so far things look pretty good along Kelly Drive. We're live in East Falls. Catherine Scott, Channel 6 Action News.
All right, good news. Thank you, Catherine.
And 6 ABC and Action News coverage will continue right after this with more of our reporters. We'll be right back.
Let's go live now to Amy Buckman. She is live from Cell 6 in Pleasantville, New Jersey right now. Hi, Amy.
Hi. Well, as we've been telling you, we've been trying to get around town. We were hoping to get from the mainland back onto Absecon Island, and we've been driving around for about an hour now. Right now, we're situated above the Atlantic City Expressway in our news van, right near one of the ramps onto the Atlantic City Expressway. And I'm going to try to turn Cell 6 around and give you a look outside the window if I can. And what you're looking at there are the emergency vehicles that are blocking the ramp. And that's been the scene that we found at every ramp onto or off of the Atlantic Atlantic City Expressway, the Garden State Parkway, the Black Horse Pike, because of the flooding that remains in this area. Now, it's not really raining that hard right now, but we're continuing to have these wind gusts that are really sort of whipping the van around as we drive around. And the other problem is that there's so many downed wires that there's no way of telling if you drive onto a dark street or to a water-covered roadway whether there are wires down, and they could be live in that water. And that's why these emergency vehicles are blocking these flooded roadways and preventing us from really traveling around. I guess the good news is we seem to be about the only ones attempting to drive around this morning. Mainly, we're just seeing emergency vehicles out on the roadways. We have not seen a lot of crews yet coming in terms of the utility crews to try to fix things, but that's because these wind gusts remain really high, and it would be unsafe at this point. Even if the roadways weren't flooded and the crews could get onto the island, it would be unsafe for them to start working on poles and things like that at this point. So it seems like we're sort of in a waiting period right now, waiting for the waters to recede, waiting for the utility crews to be able to get onto Absecon Island and to a lot of these other locations where we have the wind and rain damage, the flooding, the downed poles. And the best advice remains as it was yesterday, that if you don't have to be out and you're safely in your home and you've got enough provisions for the next few hours or next few days, you should pretty much stay where you are, stay put, let the emergency workers get to where they need to get to, and try to start fixing things, because it does seem like at least the worst of the rain is past us. And I believe Melissa said we could start seeing these winds die down after 9 o'clock this morning or a little later today. So that's what we're hoping happens. We did see, I have to tell you, we're going to try to get some video into the station as quickly as possible, a houseboat that was sitting in the middle of the Black Horse Pike. It was not a scene you usually see. We're not sure how the houseboat got there, but we'll send you that picture. It was pretty curious. And we'll send you that picture as soon as we can. So we'll keep you updated as we drive around South Jersey here and check out the scene in, I guess, what is getting close to being the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. Live on Cell 6, I'm Amy Buckman, Channel 6 Action News.
Thank you, Amy. And I'm not sure if it was you that tweeted that picture or somebody else. We actually did see that houseboat. It was just an incredible sight, as we mentioned, in the middle of the Black Horse Pike. Is now we expect to see a boat, but I have a sense that that's just the beginning of the damage we're going to see when the sun rises tomorrow morning.
That is the truth. And before we go to break, we want to show you some of the photos our viewers have been submitting to us so diligently. Let's start off with a shot of Stanton, Delaware, submitted by Caitlin. She says she snapped this picture after the Mill Creek started overflowing near the bus yards. It looks like a river. That's what it looks like.
Sure does. Up next, a pretty dramatic photo that viewer Elisa sent us from Blackwood. Flames shot up from the street there, and you can see those flames very nearly half the size of that tree after two electric lines came into contact with each other.
Yeah, a lot of people have been seeing images like that. Finally, this photo from Carrie Ann shows the ingenuity of the first responders in Ocean City. This firefighter had to bring out the jet ski to help residents today. Just amazing.
There's no boardwalk left. The boardwalk is gone.
And that was the video sent in earlier, well, yesterday, I guess, from viewer Joshua Salter in Atlantic City. You can just hear the shock in his voice, and the picture tells the story why. Large sections of the city's boardwalk destroyed by the waves and wind that moved in earlier today. Dan Quayle actually tweeted out pictures of that. Those pictures went viral, not just across this region, but across the country, as the famed Atlantic City boardwalk essentially disappeared. And that'll, by the way, happen before the worst of Hurricane Sandy moved in. Just some pictures of the damage down the shore tonight. We'll be right back. And we are back on what is now very early on a Tuesday morning as we look live through Sky 6 on the Platte Bridge right now. And if you're in the comfort of your bed and watching us on television, or perhaps listening on one of our radio partners right now because you've lost power, what we're seeing here is a very shaky camera as wind continues to whip, and Melissa has been telling us that we can expect winds upwards of 50 miles per hour in the Philadelphia area through the night. And so the worst of Sandy may be behind us, but we're not done, not by a long shot yet. And as we look at this picture, we should remind you that some other area bridges, notably the ones that are controlled by the DRPA, will reopen in a couple of hours' time, the Ben Franklin Bridge, one of 4 DRPA bridges that are closed right now, the Walt Whitman, Commodore Barry, Betsy Ross, also shut down. All 4 are set to reopen at 4 o'clock this morning, but we should note motorcycles and heavy trucks will still be banned when those bridges do ultimately open.
Let's take a live look now at the Center City skyline, and we do still see some lights there, so that just goes to show you that there is some power in the city, but as you can see, it's still a very foreboding image there. A lot of people hopefully inside their homes under the covers as they listen to those winds just howl through. And the winds are going to continue to be the big story and continue to cause some power outages, some downed trees. So still a very dangerous situation out there. And you definitely want to just stay in the safety of your home.
Certainly the power outage problem and the winds, part of the reason that all Philadelphia public and archdiocesan schools are closed today. Again, it's Tuesday, so that's the second day of closures. So in addition to the scrolling list of other closures at the bottom of your screen, we've posted the complete list of school closures and everything else on 6abc.com.
And as the storm moved inland, it topped trees and knocked down power lines in Burlington and Camden counties. Action News reporter Kenneth Moten has more on the conditions there.
The strong winds threw us around throughout the night here in Camden on Delaware Avenue. We covered a lot of ground here in Camden and Burlington counties as residents dealt with the impact of Sandy. It's a whipping wind that just won't quit, and neither will the rain in Camden and Burlington counties.
What's the message you still want to get out there to Camden County residents? Stay home. That's the most important thing you can do. As the storm intensifies, we certainly want the motoring public and residents to be safe.
Dozens of roadways have been closed, localized flooding has taken over streets, and trees have been crashing down.
We were standing on our back porch, and you seen the tree, the ground was raising.
Michelle Vasquez was on the phone with 911 in Burlington on High Street around 5 p.m. when she saw this tree coming down. She warned her neighbor, but when the 26-year-old man came to check it out, the monster of a tree landed right on him.
I was terrified. I didn't know how bad he was trapped. I didn't know how far under the tree he was trapped. It was just his ankle, and he's in the hospital now. Hopefully he's okay.
We saw people just trying to get through the impact of Sandy as best as possible. These kids in Haddonfield decided to have some fun while the rain was a little lighter, but they had some strict orders from their parents. What did your parents say?
If anything gets crazy out here or anybody gets hurt, go inside.
Emergency officials say residents heeded the warning and took advantage of shelters in Burlington and Camden counties. Right now, we understand there are no major injuries to report, but once again, just down lines, down trees, and a number of power outages. Reporting in Camden, Kenneth Moten, Channel 6 Action News.
About 200 patients in New York City had to be transferred a few hours ago to different hospitals. Officials had to evacuate NYU Langone Medical Center. Backup generators failed there after Sandy knocked out the hospital's power. And power outages have been the big story out there as the howling winds knock down trees and knock down wires. As you can imagine, that is creating a very dangerous situation, especially for those seeking medical attention and needing medical attention.
Yes, and it was a scary night for a family in Philadelphia's Lawncrest section. This is brand new video of a huge tree that came crashing down on a house on Kerper Street. The tree was split in two. You see it there, part of it smashing windows, landing on a car. It also took out a handicap ramp at the house. A witness there talked about the moment of impact.
It shook the whole house when it came down. It broke all the windows upstairs. Came right into windows.
Well, despite the damage, there are no reports, thankfully, of any injuries there. Action News continues on this Tuesday morning, right after this.
Get lottery results sent directly to your phone. Sign up at 6abc.com.
And we welcome you back as we look live, I believe, at Atlantic City this morning. Yes, it is Atlantic City through Sky 6. Hard to tell, though, on any other night. That's a bright place right there. Of course, all the casinos typically lit up with neon and lots of activity. Not the case tonight. Atlantic City pounded yesterday through much of the day by what was then Hurricane Sandy, which made landfall, I believe, just south of Atlantic City, and so that took quite a hit all day yesterday, and still very much taking one tonight.
And the concern now, when that becomes daylight, when the darkness becomes daylight, the damage that will be the issue for us.
The question, what will we see? We know what we won't see, which is much of the Atlantic City boardwalk. We've shown you a video of that having been washed away and literally broken into pieces. Just an incredible thing and really a heartbreaking sight in many, many ways. So again, when the sun rises, and we'll see the totality of the picture there, but in terms of the totality of the weather picture, meteorologist Melissa McGee over the big board now with the very latest.
Yeah, Brian, Shirley, those pictures really tell the story as to what happened and what you're going to see as you wake up tomorrow morning. We'll just give you some statistics as far as Sandy and the landfall. Made landfall 8 o'clock Monday night near Atlantic City, so near Summers Point. The maximum sustained winds when it made landfall at 80 miles per hour, I should say. So the pressure was pretty low. It was at 946 millibars. What you need to know as far as what that means, the lower the pressure, the stronger the storm, the higher the winds, and the bigger the issue you're going to have with storm surge as well. This is the strongest storm that's hit New Jersey since 1903. This storm system was very uncharacteristic for many ways. One, because of the way in which it came into our region and the way it came into our coastline. Here's Storm Tracker 6 Live 3D. What's going on right now? Well, we're still dealing with some rainfall for Philadelphia. You can see for the most part the center of that storm moving over the state of Pennsylvania, and the storm system is so massive. So even though the worst is moving out of our region, you still have some showers across the area, and these will persist and these will linger for the rest of the overnight hours and even as we wake up tomorrow morning. But as far as the heaviest of that rainfall, the heaviest with this storm and with any kind of system that we're tracking like this is mainly to the west and southwest of the center. So all of that heavy rainfall right now moving into Washington, D.C. and portions of Maryland. And for the most part, we will still be dealing with some showers across the region. But wow, did we pick up a lot of rain in a short amount of time for many locations south and west of that center. Wildwood, 11.62 inches there. West Cape May, 9.37, more than 8 inches in Rehoboth. Cedarville, 7 inches and 6.5 inches there in Estelle Manor. As far as what you can expect as we progress through the overnight hours, you're going to be dealing with some gusty winds. 38-mile-per-hour wind gusts there in Philadelphia. Up in the Poconos right now, we have a gust of 44 miles per hour. Atlantic City, 45 miles per hour. And in Dover right now, a 39-mile-per-hour wind gust. I think they're going to be elevated through a good chunk of the overnight hours. And as you wake up tomorrow morning and get into the afternoon hours, those winds will start to slacken a little bit. So that high wind warning will stay up until 9 o'clock in the morning for the heart of our region. We'll break things down for you even further and let you know what you can expect as we progress through the rest of our Tuesday. Looking at the timeline here now, right through 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to be dealing with strong gusty winds and bands of rain. Again, I really do think the heaviest is shifting off to the west-southwest. As we get into 8 a.m. Tuesday right through 8 p.m. in the evening, we're going to be dealing with windy conditions and some showers. And as far as Sandy, even though it did make landfall and now it is a post-tropical system, the storm system is so broad and so massive. Even though the heaviest is moving on out, you're still going to be dealing with those showers for some time, guys. So just going to walk over your way so we can chat a little bit more about the storm system here and what eventually we're going to see as we wake up tomorrow morning or later this morning.
We love when you join us over here.
I like it too.
Yeah, sort of validates our presence a little bit.
Exactly.
Oh, please.
So we're talking about, we're talking about significant wind gusts in the overnight hours here. And, you know, it's worth noting that when we talk about storms that tend to come through on a regular basis, we're, 20, 30 miles per hour would be extreme. 50, 60, this is,
Right. And I think it's because they're going to be sustained at a high mile per hour rate. So it's not just a gust that we're dealing with and then it moves on out. This is a prolonged period of dealing with gusty conditions. And not only are you going to have the gusty conditions, you're going to have wind going from one direction to another. So you're going to have trees and wires being knocked down. And that's going to be another issue as we wake up tomorrow morning and assess the damage.
Okay.
So Sandy's wrath continues.
Yes, it does.
And our coverage continues as well when we come right back.
Around-the-clock coverage of Hurricane Sandy, now Tropical Storm Sandy, making its way through our region tonight. I'm Brian Taff.
And I'm Shirley Ellicott, and there are a ton of closures due to Sandy, and we can't list them all by telling you, but we do have them scrolling at the bottom of your screen, so hopefully you can follow along with that. And at this hour, the major highways in and around Philadelphia are set to reopen. They've been closed for a few hours now. The doing of Governor Corbett, who had ordered the Schuylkill Expressway, the Vine Street Expressway, the Blue Route 476, and I-95 closed until 2 a.m. And the city of Philadelphia has closed Roosevelt Boulevard, Route 1 as well.
Now, as we've told you a couple of times, but worth repeating here, all Philadelphia public and archdiocesan schools are closed today. In addition to the scrolling list of other closures at the bottom of the screen, we've put the complete list on 6abc.com.
We also want to bring you the latest numbers on power outages. Those numbers continue to grow. PSE&G now says that more than 1 million customers are now without power. Just an amazing number. Atlantic City Electric is reporting more than 211,000 customers are without power. That's mostly in Atlantic County, and Delmarva says over 78,000 customers are in the dark. PECO currently has 570,000 outages, the bulk of those in Bucks and Montgomery County.
Now, let's take it live outside. That's where the story is this morning. Sky 6 HD live at Philadelphia International Airport. And, you know, what's interesting here is that the shot has been different every time we've looked at it, isn't it? At times it's been less windy, less rainy. Other times more significantly windy and rainy. And this is one of those times when it appears the rain's picked up actually at this hour. No flights in or out of Philadelphia International all day yesterday. Thousands more have been canceled. Moving into tomorrow morning, we know that U.S. Airways has canceled all of its flights for tomorrow. Also, other airlines as well have canceled theirs. When the airport is, in fact, open, Atlantic City Airport hopes to reopen at sometime Tuesday afternoon. Airports in New York City were shut down today as well. LaGuardia, JFK, Newark, all shut down yesterday. When they reopen, yet to be determined here.
And Allie Gorman filed a report for us that we're going to show you in just a minute. But in the meantime, we are also taking a look at this video. National air travel has also been impacted. So this is not just our area. This is all across the country. Terminals up and down the East Coast were empty yesterday, and that left travelers stranded at airports across the country. Planes were also stuck on the ground. More than a dozen jets were parked at Los Angeles International, unable to fly to the eastern U.S. And health reporter and registered nurse Allie Gorman visited a shelter in Chester County. That's where she was, and she talked with people trying to ride out the storm as best they can from their homes.
As roads like this one in Chester County started to flood, the American Red Cross says more people showed up at shelters. Sharon Williams lives in a flood-prone area, so she brought herself and her 88-year-old father to a shelter.
I had to get him someplace safe because I didn't want to be at the last minute trying to get him out of there.
Sharon says her father also has medical problems, so she was happy to find out the Red Cross has medical help at every shelter.
We have nurses on staff at all of our shelters, so they are trained nurses. Some of these nurses work in hospitals around the area, and they're volunteers with us as nurses. So they're here to take care of special needs.
Many shelters are also pet-friendly, giving both people and pets safety and comfort.
It's been good. It's been great. Sleeping good, eating good, everything.
And there are dozens of other shelters open throughout the Lehigh and Delaware valleys. The Red Cross tells us they have more than 500 people staying in local shelters within Pennsylvania, all seeking refuge from the storm. Reporting from Chester County, Allie Gorman, Channel 6, Action News.
Well, hundreds of people are staying in shelters right now. In fact, the city of Camden opened 3 new emergency shelters last night. Action News stopped by the Bonsall School on Mount Ephraim Avenue. And over on Hatton Avenue, there's a new shelter for the homeless at New Life Ministries. They can also seek cover at St. Joe's Church at 29th and Westfield Avenue. And according to New Jersey's emergency management officials, more than 2,200 people are in shelters this morning statewide.
And one of the city's 3 shelters has been set up here at West Philadelphia High School. We found members of the Red Cross filing in earlier yesterday to make sure evacuees have all the supplies they need. More than 300 residents have already evacuated from their homes in Philadelphia. The city has also set up shelters at Roxborough High School and Fells High School as well.
Interesting, as I'm following people on Twitter this morning, many are saying, look, I can't go to bed yet because I don't quite know what to expect. Should I still worry about my house? Should I worry about my property, or perhaps people have a second house? So let's get the very latest on the overnight weather conditions from Melissa McGee over there. Melissa, what should people expect tonight?
Well, Brian, tonight you're going to expect more of the rain, but the rain for the most part won't be as intense as it was last night or yesterday, however you want to say it, as we've been here for so long. But the heaviest has shifted off to the west-southwest. So what can you expect for the rest of tonight and early this morning? Just some light rainfall. As you wake up tomorrow morning, though, you're still going to have an issue with some of the gusty winds. Storm Tracker 6 Live 3D showing you Sandy already moved on shore. There's the center of that storm moving over the state of Pennsylvania. The storm system is so massive, though. It's taking up a large area. So even though the storm system has moved inland, we're still going to be dealing with residual effects as a result of the storm system, and it was cold enough on the backside to have some snow out across the higher terrain of the Virginians. As far as the rest of the track with Sandy, this is now a post-tropical system, but as we get into Thursday, the storm system will continue to move on off to the north and east in the typical direction that storm systems move once they work their way into the mid-Atlantic and into our latitude. As far as rainfall here in Philadelphia, 2 3/4 worth of rain. In Allentown, just about an inch of rainfall. So this really kind of gives you an idea of where the heaviest of that rainfall was. If you were to the north of the storm system, you really didn't get a lot of heavy rain, but you got a lot of heavy wind. Millville, 5.36 inches, 5 then close to a quarter there in Wilmington, and in Dover, close to 7 inches of rainfall. We'll look at some of the other totals, and these were the really big numbers to the south and west of the center. Wildwood, 11.62, 9.37 in West Cape May. Rehoboth, 8 inches, 7 inches there in Cedarville, and in Estelle Manor, 6.57 inches of rainfall. I'm going to bring in David Murphy because he has more on the gusty winds, and that's something that you're going to be dealing with even as we get into the rest of the overnight hours, David.
But don't go away too fast, Melissa. So I have just come over from the hotel, and I'm catching up here as to what's happened over the last 8 hours. It seems as though the winds verified. We did get very strong wind gusts. They're still fairly gusty out there, but in the process of dropping now between now and the early morning hours, right? And the rain ended up being to the west and south of the track. The track came in at, or the landfall was about 8 p.m. And I'm having the same problem with you. What's 8 p.m.
What
and
day
AM?
is it?
So at about 8 p.m. around Atlantic City, it came ashore. And that would have pushed most of the rain down through South Jersey and Delaware, but not so much up into Philadelphia. And that means we kind of dodged a bullet around here on rain, right?
And dodged a bullet as far as finding that severe flooding. If you're to the south and west, I mean, we're going to have some issues with some of our creeks to the south and west of Philadelphia, but as far as dodging that bullet, we did. All depends on where you live, because coastal sections of New Jersey are going to be hit hard, especially as they wake up early this morning.
Now, we were looking at various stream gauges, too, over at the computers a minute ago, and the only creek that I still see that has significant flooding that's among the main creeks and waterways with gauges would be the Brandywine Creek, both in Downingtown and Chadds Ford. That's still up above levels, probably still producing at least moderate flooding and maybe major. And I see that both of those that creek at those two locations won't be down below flood stage until probably after daybreak and a little bit later on today. One of them might actually be all day today. So out in Chester County, we have some issues there. All right, Melissa, thanks. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about wind gusts. These are the top gusts as the storm was coming ashore around Atlantic City and up and down the coast. How about Surf City, 89-mile-per-hour gust? That was about as high as it got. Tuckerton, 88. Atlantic City, 77-mile-per-hour gust recorded. Cape May, 73. And Toms River, New Jersey, 68. Now, just keep these numbers in mind, anywhere from up close to 90 down to about 68. These are the gusts over by the shore as the storm came in. But as the storm moves inland, you can see how the friction with the ground and the fact that the storm was weakening a little bit lowered our wind gusts a bit. In Philadelphia, still pretty darn strong, 68-mile-per-hour gust. I can't remember the last time I reported a gust that high in the city, but not as high as the shore. Allentown did get up to 81, but then we've got more numbers in the 60s and 50s as you go down through the list here. And, you know, we're hearing Brian and Shirlene talk about power outages. My sense is that, yeah, that is certainly an issue right now. And I guess as the sun comes up and the emergency managers get out there, we'll get a better fix on how many trees came down. But I'm also feeling like maybe these numbers could have been a little bit worse. Brian, Shirlene, I'll send it back to you guys. And, you know, I know you'll be talking more about where we stand with power outages and down trees as we go through the next couple of hours. I'm thinking a lot of the area dodged the bullet on rain, and hopefully we're keeping more of the power and the lights on than we thought might have otherwise happened.
Yeah, and yet still power outages are so significant. million people throughout the region without power right now. Let's go live outside. Catherine Scott back at East Falls for us this morning. And Catherine, surveying the scene out there, what are you seeing right now?
Well, so far it's pretty uneventful, which is great news because this is an area where you often see flooding when the weather gets bad, like it has been. And of course, Sandy was talking about how it was a historical storm. And yet, if you take a look at Kelly Drive by Midvale Avenue, you can see that there really isn't a whole lot, there isn't really any flooding on the roadway. Though the river does look high, it is moving at a pretty good clip. I spoke to a police officer earlier. He said that along Kelly Drive there was no flooding, though it does remain closed just in case. MLK Drive also remains closed this morning. But right now the roadway is just wet. There is some debris, some wet leaves. Every once in a while you might see some smaller down limbs in this area, but really not a whole lot going on by way of flooding. We also drove through many not too long ago, about an hour ago, Main Street, which is also often a flood-prone area. That was pretty clear. There was some debris in the street. It looked like there might have been a power outage around there, but as far as flooding, so far, nothing going on there. However, flooding is a situation you have to keep monitoring. Of course, the rain's coming down still. Sometimes the storm comes first, the flood comes later. So this is something that, of course, we have to keep an eye on. But so far, good news on that front here in East Falls and also in Manayunk from what we could see. However, that said, Mayor Nutter spoke a couple hours ago, and he was urging people to stay at home. Just because it seems like the worst of it seems to have moved past us doesn't mean that there's still heavy wind gusts. We're feeling them out there. It's still raining. And of course, there's the aftermath of what's been going on for the previous day. Those heavy winds brought down a lot of trees, which brought down power lines. When it's nighttime and visibility is low, and of course with the rain and the wind, it's difficult to see what's going on. So of course, just use caution if you have.
Lost Catherine there, but she was talking about, you know, the situation out there and Mayor Nutter's words. And speaking of Mayor Nutter, he did stop by the 6ABC studios earlier today, and he spoke a short time ago about how the city is faring through the storm. Let's take a listen.
In Philadelphia, 41,000 people without power. In the region, a little over 400,000.
For PECO, the last number.
PECO. So let me first say, PECO is a tremendous partner with us. We know from Hurricane Irene and certainly many other winter snow events, they will jump on this and get power restored as quickly as possible. Of course, we ask the public to try to be as patient as possible. That's what all of those warnings and encouragements were about, in terms of batteries, flashlights, provisions, all of those kinds of things, because we know, unfortunately, given the rain combined with high winds, trees are coming down, power goes out, and this is a cycle that we go through. Our experience last year with Hurricane Irene is that PECO was able to get Philadelphia up and running pretty quickly, as well as all the folks in the region. We expect the same this time. They do a great job.
You've had experience with Irene.
Yep.
You've had some on-the-job experience.
Just a little bit.
You had a long time planning for this because you knew far in advance that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Having said all that, were there any surprises this time around once the storm started coming in?
Not really. You know, the planning for this, as you mentioned, has been in place for some time. We had the experience from Irene. We've had all kinds of other storms and winter events, but every one of these is different. And this one, we expected a little more wind from Irene than Irene, and also that this was, at least initially, was going to be a slower moving storm, could stay with us longer than Irene did, and we're still anticipating the impact of the storm in Philadelphia. We've been in that track, we've been in that path for a long, long period of time. We'll see that overnight, and as was mentioned in the weather forecast, that will really tell us by the morning, certainly by the time the sun comes up, what the real damage has been. We're concerned about coastal flooding along the Delaware River. The record there is 10.5 feet. We're anticipating 10 feet by about 2 a.m. this morning, so we're monitoring that.
Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter on this set just about midnight this morning in a conversation with Jim Gardner about the power situation and so much else. ABC News reporter TJ Winnick has been in Cape May, New Jersey through the storm.
But some of the serious lingering issues are farther north tonight in New York City, and here's his report now.
Sandy made landfall in southern New Jersey this evening, packing 80-mile-per-hour winds. Record-breaking high tides and rough surf battered the coastline. Roads washed away by storm surge and flooding. Water poured into ground zero in New York. In Rockaway Park, Queens, emergency crews scrambled to rescue people trapped in buildings near a fire raging out of control. While in Manhattan, more than 200 patients had to be evacuated and moved to other facilities.
The one thing that we had not counted on, New York University's hospital backup power, in spite of them being assuring us that it's been tested, stopped working.
More than 3 million people are without power in 11 states. Part of the city that never sleeps is in the dark. The wall of a 4-story building collapsed in lower Manhattan, exposing apartments inside. No one was injured. But at least 7 storm-related deaths have been reported in Connecticut, Maryland, and 5 in New York, including 3 children. Public transportation for more than 12 million people came to a halt in New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. And when the eye of the storm passed over Atlantic City, the winds abated, clouds parted, and the full moon came out. 60 million people will be impacted by this storm. FEMA has already pledged over $3.5 billion for the cleanup if necessary. TJ Winnick, ABC News, Cape May, New Jersey.
So we recognize that site behind TJ, the famed Congress Hall there in Cape May, New Jersey. And of course, that's where Jennifer Joyce, Action News reporter, was reporting throughout the day. And we saw that area take quite a beating as well today.
Rather frightening, and we're just very curious to see what it's going to look like upon sunrise. What the situation is going to be, the devastation, the cleanup. That is going to be the big story later on today. Amy Buckman is live for us right now. She is on Cell 6 again. They have been on the move. And Amy, where are you now?
It appears she's frozen right now. That's okay. We're dealing with Cell 6 technology in the midst of a storm. We'll get back to Amy just as soon as we can. In the meantime, let's update you on some transportation issues, right? DRPA bridges will reopen at 4 o'clock in the morning. That will come as welcome news to many of you. But motorcycles and heavy trucks, don't bother. Those are still banned.
Gusty winds forced area bridges to close, and Action News reporter Sarah Bloomquist, she filed a report along the Delaware River for us. Let's take a look.
Here along Delaware Avenue, the winds really picked up in the evening hours, and for that reason, at this point, the DRPA bridges are now closed. We're talking about this bridge that we're under, the Benjamin Franklin Bridge, along with the Walt Whitman, the Commodore Barry, and the Betsy Ross. Here on the Delaware River, you can see the wave action here just from the wind. It's actually whipping up right there against the Ray Street Pier, and the trees on the pier are really whipping around as well. As in terms of the water level, earlier it was quite a bit up this boat ramp, but it's receded, but really kicking around there as the wind has picked up. Out here on Delaware Avenue at this point, people heeding the warnings and for the most part staying off the road. But again, we've been watching the street signs and the street lights really whipping around as these winds picked up in the evening hours. That's the latest here from Delaware Avenue. I'm Sarah Bloomquist, Channel 6 Action News.
All right, Sarah, just one of many Action News reporters fanned out across the region, even in these overnight hours. As we take a live look outside right now through Sky 6, you can see the remnants of Sandy, potentially still causing lots of problems right now. Sky 6 live over Atlantic City. The lights might give the indication that that is unharmed by Sandy's wrath. Anything but the case. We'll detail the damage there and elsewhere when Action News continues this morning.
Welcome back. Taking another live look at Philadelphia International Airport. Earlier, Brian, when we saw this shot, it definitely looked a little different, and it looks different once again. Still an eerie scene out there, and we're also taking a look at some downed trees. A tree took a heavy toll on this car in Wilmington, Delaware, crushed the sedan on the 500 block of Ferris Street. We don't have any word of injuries here, but there is some serious damage to whoever owns that vehicle. Their car is pretty damaged out there.
Meanwhile, another large tree fell, this one across Henry Avenue in Roxborough. Drivers trying to go get a cup of coffee found the branches strewn across all 4 lanes, blocking their path.
It's not getting the water, but we definitely got the wind. There's trees down all over here. So I'm putting it back in the middle, as far away from the trees as I can get tonight. That doesn't belong there.
Well, that driver does not want to see this kind of damage happen to his car. To help clear a path, he had to pull a lost bumper off of Henry Drive.
The number of people who are going to be seeing problems like that. And the Delaware Valley is dealing with rain and blustery conditions, but this is what Sandy dropped on West Virginia. Just take a look at this. It's amazing. The monster storm system collided with a cold front there, creating snow in high elevations. As much as 2 or 3 feet could fall in the West Virginia mountains by tomorrow.
No, thank you. Meanwhile, an alert has been issued at an Ocean County nuclear power plant because of rising water levels. Turns out Oyster Creek in Lacey Township is currently offline for maintenance. But officials declared a, quote, unusual event at about 7 o'clock last night. That moved up to an alert just before 9, which is still a pretty low warning level by comparison. Federal officials say all plants are still safe.
We've seen a lot of issues with sparking wires and of course, now we're seeing fires. Emergency crews had to combat Sandy's high winds to fight this house fire in Philadelphia's East Oak Lane last night. It broke out shortly after 10 o'clock along the 500 block of Independence Avenue. Firefighters arrived to find flames had already charred the 3rd floor of that home. They raised a second alarm about a half an hour later. No injuries, fortunately, have been reported in this one.
Which has been great to see because we've seen so many of those, unfortunately, situations over the last several hours here, but very few injuries, which is a blessing for sure. Well, as the storm moved inland, it toppled trees and knocked down power lines in Burlington and Camden counties. Action News reporter Kenneth Moten has more on the conditions there right now. Kenneth.
The strong winds threw us around throughout the night here in Camden on Delaware Avenue. We covered a lot of ground here in Camden and Burlington counties as residents dealt with the impact of Sandy. It's a whipping wind that just won't quit, and neither will the rain in Camden and Burlington counties.
What's the message you still want to get out there to Camden County residents?
Stay home. It's the most important thing you can do. As the storm intensifies, we certainly want the motoring public and residents to be safe.
Dozens of roadways have been closed, localized flooding has taken over streets, and trees have been crashing down.
We were standing on our back porch, and you seen the ground was raising.
Michelle Vasquez was on the phone with 911 in Burlington on High Street around 5 p.m. when she saw this tree coming down. She warned her neighbor, but when the 26-year-old man came to check it out, the monster of a tree landed right on him.
I was terrified. I didn't know how bad he was trapped. I didn't know how far under the tree he was trapped. It was just his ankle, and he's in the hospital now. Hopefully he's okay.
We saw people just trying to get through the impact of Sandy as best as possible. These kids in Haddonfield decided to have some fun while the rain was a little lighter, but they had some strict orders from their parents. What did your parents say?
If anything gets crazy out here or anybody gets hurt, go inside.
Emergency officials say residents heeded the warning and took advantage of shelters in Burlington and Camden counties. Right now, we understand there are no major injuries to report, but once again, just down lines, down trees, and a number of power outages. Reporting in Camden, Kenneth Moten, Channel 6 Action News.
And we have new video of a late-night water rescue in northern New Jersey. Take a look at this. Emergency crews ushered a family from their home in Weehawken, Hudson County. They ignored evacuations, and water levels became much too dangerous for them. So some rescued residents said they had to escape from the 2nd floor because the water was too high. And this is exactly what city officials were hoping to avoid in cases like this.
Yeah, you know, people have begun to assess Sandy's devastation station, as they will tomorrow morning, or when the sun rises here in Upper Darby, Delaware County. Neighbors brought their cameras outside where a downed tree crossed that car on the 300 block of Maple Street. You can't even, in many angles, you can't even see the car beneath the leaves, but 2 other cars narrowly escaped major damage.
And it was a scary night for a family in Philadelphia's Lawncrest section. This is new video of a huge tree that came crashing down in a home on Kerper Street. The tree was split in 2. Part of it smashed windows on the 2nd and 3rd floor. It also took out a handicap ramp. A witness talked about the moment of impact.
It shook the whole house when it came down. It broke all the windows upstairs. Came right into windows.
Despite that damage, there are no reports of any injuries, but warning you to stay on lower levels of your home because those upper levels are definitely prone to those down trees. That's where those trees are going to hit first, so you can definitely get hurt out there. So
that's right. You know, and as David Murphy mentioned this morning while on the air, and will no doubt mention again when he joins us fairly shortly, is that if you have kids whose bedrooms are nearby trees, just a safe bet to not sleep in that bedroom tonight. Go down to the basement or to a room without a tree directly outside the window. Now, Sky 6 HD looking down at the I-95, I-95 there by Penn's Landing, and we want to tell you that all major roads are set to reopen at different times here of the day over the next couple of hours. 95, the Schuylkill, the Blue Route, Vine Street Expressway, Route 1, all shut down until at least 4 this morning, so you got about another hour and a half there. There are also travel restrictions on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Only essential personnel, that's firefighters, police, city officials, are allowed on those roads. 6abc.com. of course, is updating all the road restrictions in effect across the area. Many of you have been asking us on Twitter and Facebook about New Jersey and Delaware. Your best bet, head to our website right now to get the latest on that. By the way, SEPTA is still suspended at this hour and will likely stay as such at least through the noon hour on this Tuesday.
And Kelly Drive is well known for the flooding that goes on there. This stretch of the road near Midvale was closed because of a downed tree, one of the dozens that have fallen in the city of Philadelphia in the wake of Sandy.
Now, another fallen tree hanging in a sling of power lines has created a rather dangerous situation in Winfield Heights, right nearby the station here. The action cam happened upon this scene before emergency crews arrived on Neal Drive, that's near Presidential. And we've got a safety reminder for our viewers. If you find any trees tangled in power lines, please just don't approach them. Don't get anywhere near them because they might still carry a charge. And that charge can impact you even if you're several feet away from it. So also, please call your local emergency responders and your utility if you see a scene like this on property nearby you.
Truly some good advice. And we also want to bring you the very latest on power outages as well, if we can take a look at that next. PSE&G is now reporting about 1 million customers now without power, and Atlantic City Electric is reporting more than 211,000 customers are without power. That's mostly in Atlantic County.
Now, Delmarva says 78,000 customers, more than that, are in the dark right now. In Pico, this is a staggering number, it blows my mind. 570,000 outages. Again, that's Pico. The bulk of those are in Bucks and Montgomery County tonight.
And let's try Amy again. Amy Buckman, she was trying to go live for us before with Cell 6, and we know that she has been on the move. You've been pretty much everywhere. We wanted to know what your latest location was and what you were seeing there, Amy.
Well, we are actually on a little bridge over the Patcon River in Linwood, New Jersey. This is one of the locations where we have been continuously trying to get from the mainland back onto Absecon Island, but we have not been able to do that because of the flooding on the roadways. There are down wires on those flooded roadways, and as I showed you a little while ago, there are emergency personnel blocking the entrance ramps to the Atlantic City Expressway, to the Garden State Parkway, and the Black Horse Pike. So we're trying some of these smaller secondary roads. We're actually going to see if we could get down into Summers Point and then maybe get over into Ocean City. But I'm going to flip Cell 6 around and show you the roadway in front of us if I can through the window. See all that debris on the roadway there, all that brown stuff? That got up here on the roadway when the Patcong River actually overflowed onto this bridge overnight. Now, the house where we were staying last night is on a little lake off of that river, and as I mentioned earlier, the lake actually almost went up to the back door of the house, so that was a little frightening. The water levels, as we've been mentioning throughout this storm, have reached levels all over South Jersey and all these shore and near-shore communities to levels that have basically never been seen before, or haven't been seen in the last 100 or so years. And so you can imagine that in combination with the high winds have caused all sorts of problems on roadways with the down wires and these rivers overflowing their banks, and it's really hard to get around. You might see some lights up in the distance. Pretty much the only other vehicles we've seen out on the roadways tonight are emergency crews, you know, the firefighters and the police officers going around and trying to see what's going on and assess the situation. But until it gets light, it's going to be really hard to get a clear assessment of what's going on. But we're going to keep trying to drive around here, let you know what we can see, shoot some video. We've seen a couple boats on roads, which clearly was not where those boats were before the storm. We're not quite sure how they got there. There was one down by the Ocean Heights Marina. There was another one on the Black Horse Pike. There was a houseboat we showed you earlier. So the force of these waters has really caused a lot of movement of things that should not have moved prior to the storm. So we'll keep you posted as we drive around South Jersey. We'll give you more reports on Cell 6. Live on Cell 6, I'm Amy Buckman, Channel 6 Action News. Back to you guys.
All right, Amy, thank you. Bring us what you can, when you can. Of course, that a rather revealing picture, even just through the car window, to see all those leaves in the street. And I'm sure that's a similar scene just about everywhere early this morning.
Let's get a check of weather now. We have a new team working for us now. You know, we've just been around the clock. David Henry. David Henry.
Oh, that's okay.
It's okay. It's been a long day.
I'm kind of delirious.
It's happened before, hours into coverage like this.
Has it really? Okay, I'm not the first one. Great. But you're back, and you're bringing us the very latest on Sandy, too.
And Karen Rogers is in the house, too, and we're both going to be taking this straight through lunchtime. Okay. So get ready to see a lot of us, right? Storm Tracker 6 Live HD. One nice thing that we can say about the situation, if there's anything we can say nice, is that the center of the storm has now pushed well past Philadelphia, and it's actually approaching central Pennsylvania at this point. So while we still have an impact right now with strong wind gusts, the rain, the heaviest of it, is beginning to push over toward Washington, D.C. and getting away from us. And the flooding situation locally, while it has been a problem overnight, is beginning to get a little better out there, so that's good news. Sandy's track from here as an extratropical low pressure center. You can see now how it's pulling well out into western Pennsylvania and then pushing up to the north. So over the next 24 to 48 hours, that's where the storm's going to go. Now, we still have flood warnings in place across much of the region. And in fact, as I said yesterday before I left work, I thought these flood warnings would be extended out to places like Reading and Lancaster County. They were extended and they still are. But I can tell you that when we look at flood gauges along our major waterways, the only waterway that is still significantly above flood stage would be the Brandywine Creek, both at Chadds Ford and up the road at Downingtown. So in those areas, and you guys who live along the Brandywine, you know what you're talking about there, or what we're talking about. Those are the areas that you really have to be careful. The other areas through here are basically just general storm drains clogged by leaves that are still trying to get rid of the volume of water. Some of those smaller creeks and streams, you know, just generally there's going to be some flooding problems scattered around the region. So most of our major waterways settling down at this point, other than the Brandywine. Other than that, it's just scattered flooding out there. But boy, we did get a lot of rain, and notice how a lot of it was down the coast where that landfall came in. Almost 12 inches of rain in Wildwood, West Cape May, 9.37, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 8.08 inches of rain, and then Cedarville, 7, and Estelle Manor, which is also more or less down in the vicinity of the shore, 6.57 inches. But when you come up to Philadelphia, 2.75 inches, which Melissa McGee was noting, we believe is a one-day record in Philadelphia. So a lot of rain, but obviously not as much as we had elsewhere. And you can kind of say that at least rain-wise, we may have dodged what could have been a larger bullet in Philadelphia. Allentown only got under an inch, so that's not too bad. And closer to the shore in Millville, 5.36 inches. Wilmington, Delaware, now you're getting back to the south of that storm track. More significant rain there, 5.20. And Dover, Delaware, 6.69 inches. Now I want to bring in my comrade in arms, Karen Rogers. And how'd you sleep?
I slept okay.
okay? Yeah, me
Look
too.
at those numbers. How impressive, right? Nearly 12 inches in Wildwood, and it's still raining.
So I think basically we verified in rain, and you're going to talk more about winds now, and we'll see how we did there. Okay?
Yeah, that's right. Let's check out the latest details that we have with that. And first, starting with future tracker rain, because we can talk about that rain keep on going. That was 6 o'clock this morning. By 9:30, we're going to see rain at times during the day today. Even 1:30 in the afternoon, we're looking at bands of rain. So you're not really out of the woods just yet. And then later on at 9:30 tonight, we still have some rain in spots. So watching that. Record flooding, though, in Atlantic City. The ocean itself, 8.9 feet, the second highest ever. The Cape May Bay, 8.91, a new record for Cape May. Shore gusts, how about that wind? 89 miles an hour in Surf City. Tuckerton, 88. Atlantic City, 77 mile an hour winds. Hurricane force winds in Atlantic City, Tuckerton, Surf City, Cape May, 73. Toms River, 68 mile an hour gusts. Inland gusts, even in Philadelphia, 68 mile an hour wind. As you talk about so many people without power, you can see why. We had trees down and power lines down. Allentown, 81. So even in Allentown, although you didn't get as much rain, you certainly got that wind. Wrightstown, 69. Trenton, 68. Wilmington, 56 mile an hour. Future tracker winds showing even at 6 o'clock this morning, we're still looking at winds in the 30s, up in the 40s in the Lehigh Valley. Then by 1 o'clock today, they start to die down at times. It's still going to be windy today. By 7 o'clock tonight, we start seeing dips into the 20s. And then for tomorrow, Halloween, we see the winds relax a little bit. So conditions are slowly improving with the rain and with the wind. The storm timeline from now till about 8 a.m. tomorrow, 8 a.m. today, strong gusty winds, bands of rain. And by 8 a.m. today to 8 p.m. tonight, windy still. We talked about those winds keeping with showers through the area. So we'll be watching this throughout the clock as we continue to watch this area of low pressure, what was Hurricane Sandy, moving in and still battering us with rain and in some cases wind as well. Brian and Charlene.
All right, thank you so much, Karen. And let's head on over to New York and let's see what they are contending with. Flooding from Sandy is making it extremely difficult for firefighters to get the upper hand on this fire in Queens. Firefighters scaled the building to rescue 25 people. Just look at these images. 3 buildings have collapsed as a result. There are reports that the fire was spreading and fire was coming across the top of the roof where residents were waiting for help. Just amazing.
And another dire situation here. About 200 patients in New York City are being taken to different hospitals even as we speak right now. Officials say an evacuation is underway at NYU Langone Medical Center. Turns out backup generators there failed after Sandy knocked out the hospital's power. Even though those generators had been tested, they still failed. As you might guess, that's a dangerous situation for people in need of medical attention this morning.
And let's take a look at North Jersey. Rushing water replaced rush hour traffic in the metro New York area last night as the superstorm named Sandy hit the area. And here's a look at the inside of a commuter train station in Hoboken, New Jersey. All mass transit in the area remains shut down, as well as the 3 major airports in the New York area. Water also seeped into subway stations and the tunnel connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn, and those images are just astonishing. Do you take a look at this? Storm surge flooded much of lower Manhattan and caused widespread power outages as well.
You know, that surge really has socked New York City. Battery Park reached record level flooding. There are also widespread power outages in the city. 375,000 people were told to evacuate, but as you can see, well, not everybody's left, far from it. These are the flooded streets of Chelsea, a Manhattan neighborhood. Most of the city's public transportation, bridges, tunnels, and airports were closed as conditions grew worse.
And when the city shuts down, much of the country shuts down as well. I mean, that's just how tough this is. And we're looking at another pretty major scene here. New York has its eyes to the skies for more than just Sandy. Check out the partially collapsed crane swaying high above the city's streets. The superstorm's fierce winds brought down part of this construction site yesterday atop a skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. Buildings around it, including a luxury hotel, were evacuated, but fortunately there were no reported injuries at all.
And a $90 million apartment
I know.
on
Can't get
top
over
of that
that
building, really. Much of New York City, plunged into darkness due to Sandy. We mentioned the power outage there. But what appears to be a giant explosion set the night sky ablaze. You see it there. The storm reportedly triggered that violent burst of light at an electric substation on Lower Manhattan. The beam of light could be seen straight across the East River over in Brooklyn. Quite quite a sight there.
And let's take a live look at Philadelphia International Airport before we take a quick break. And as I told you, the New York area airports like JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, all shut down, and such is the case at Philadelphia International as well. We're all just trying to wait and see what's going to happen and when these flights will resume once again. So stick around, and we'll be right back with more coverage of Sandy.
Check out some brand new video just into us here at Action News, and it illustrates the ferocity of Sandy. This is a houseboat camped in the middle of a street in Pleasantville, Atlantic County, New Jersey. Amy Buckman talked about this on the air a short time ago. They sent us this video. Boy, flooded neighborhoods and some of the countless downed trees. Amy's crew is roving around, gathering real-time conditions for you there. Sandy's damage becoming more and more evident as we begin to get a little bit more in the way of daylight. Of course, we expect that once we get all daylight, we'll see a whole lot more in the way of images like that.
Let's send it on over to David Henry with the latest on Sandy's track.
I'm going to let you get away with that one more time, David Murphy.
Wait, can I say it again?
I know you guys must be
David
so
Murphy,
tired.
David Murphy, David Murphy.
That's okay. All right, Shirley and Allison. So we've got an area of low pressure. This is the former center of the hurricane, which of course is an extratropical low pressure center now. One change to what we were thinking was that instead of this hovering around the region and then going straight up from here, it is still on the move west, and that is helping to lower the winds and especially take the wind or the rain away right now. This eventually will pop up to the north, but it is pushing away. We still do have some lingering problems. The winds are still relatively strong out there. In fact, we do have a high wind warning up until about 9 o'clock this morning. I don't know that the 75-mile-per-hour gusts are still going to verify, but the idea here is until 9 o'clock for the next several hours, we still have wind gusts strong enough to give us a continued problem, particularly with tree branches coming down. Flood warnings are still in effect, too, from Berks County all the way down through Philadelphia, through Bucks County anyway, and then through most of South Jersey and Delaware. But there really is only one waterway right now that is giving us significant problems, and that would be the Brandywine Creek. This is the area around Downingtown. This is probably not going to be below flood stage until noon. We are or had been looking at major flooding. That's going to drop to moderate flooding and then generally get better. But again, that's above flood stage until noon. And we also have the area of Chadds Ford. That was Downingtown. Chadds Ford is probably going to be above flood stage through today. Okay, so that's the one real big ticket item. Elsewhere, it's just minor scattered flooding. Rainfall so far has been pretty impressive. 11 inches or more in Wildwood. Cape May also up around 10. Rehoboth Beach, Cedarville, and Estelle Manor, pretty high amounts. These are all closer to the shore where the storm made landfall at 8 o'clock last evening around Atlantic City. When you come inland, the rainfall amounts aren't quite as impressive in some spots. Philadelphia 2.75, significant rain but not as bad as the shore. Allentown less than an inch. And then you get to Millville down into the gut of South Jersey and we're over 5. Wilmington actually did get up to 5, but that makes sense because if you think about it, we were saying that highest rain would be just to the west and south of the storm track, and that's where Wilmington was. What a difference between Wilmington and Philadelphia, though. You know, about half as much rain here than as there. And Dover, Delaware, farther down into that rain shield, 6.69 inches of rain. Future Tracker 6 for the rest of today shows you that we are going to see the rain begin to slacken off, and that should be continue to be the case through the day today. So the rain is in the process of moving out. Karen Rogers, we still have issues with wind, though, and that is going to be an issue as we go through probably about midday and beyond, I think, the way things are looking, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you can see from that future tracker you showed the rain is dying down at times today. It's not going to be as rainy, but the winds are still going to be a significant issue. So how strong were these winds? Sandy made landfall at 8 o'clock last night, just about 5 miles south of Atlantic City. It's a Category 1 hurricane. In Surf City, we clocked an 89-mile-an-hour wind gust. In Tuckerton, 88 miles. Atlantic City, still hurricane force winds, 77-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Cape May, 73. Toms River, 68 miles an hour, so significant wind gusts. How about inland? In Philadelphia, 68 miles. Even though we didn't get as much rain in the northwest because it came in a lot faster than the models originally showed, so we didn't get that torrential rain for as long a period of time. Wow, we really did get these winds. Even in the Lehigh Valley, you felt the strength. In Allentown, 81-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Wrightstown, 69. Trenton, 68. Wilmington, Delaware, 56 miles an hour. So a huge gust, and that was certainly enough to cause the problem. So what's happening with the winds right now? Future Future Tracker 6 can show us this morning at about 6 o'clock. We're still looking at 38-mile-an-hour wind gusts in Philadelphia, 48 along the coastline, even in the Lehigh Valley. 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts, 43. So you're looking at significant wind. We fast this forward to about 1 o'clock this afternoon. Hasn't died down a whole lot, right? You're still in the upper 30s in the Lehigh Valley and Philadelphia, Trenton, 34-mile-an-hour gusts, Dover, 41, as well as Millville. But then as we get forward to tonight, we start to relax a little bit with the winds. At 7:30, we're looking in the 20s for the most part, a little bit more bearable. How about Halloween? Busy time, right? 10 a.m., 19-mile-an-hour wind gusts in Philadelphia, 15 in the Lehigh Valley, 20s along the coast, not quite as bad. So the winds are going to take a little longer to relax, even though that rain is going to wrap up first. Storm safety. Still want to watch with these down wires because the wind is not stopping here. So you never approach the down wires. You got to tell your kids they can look dead, but they can still be charged and charge the ground as well. Storm timeline. From now for a few more hours, still about 8 o'clock, we're going to have the strongest gusty winds, bands of rain. From about 8 a.m. Tuesday to 8 p.m. Tuesday, still windy straight through tonight. But the rain is a little less. We're talking showers at this point. We're going to keep tracking the very latest and give you the updates around the clock here. Brian and Charlene.
All right, Karen. Thank you so much.
We walk back to get away from the horn.
Well, there's John Rollins right there. John Rollins live in Wilmington, Delaware right now. And John, we were just hearing that wind gusts there 56 miles per hour in the last couple of hours. Tremendous amounts of rain there today, and we have audio evidence of what that's done there in Wilmington.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is a sight and sound story. Up until about 12:30, according to neighbors, this was the base of a large stately oak tree here in the 500 block of Ferris Street. That's Woodlawn Park right behind me here. It was here. It is now a victim of Sandy. What happened? A combination of, I guess, the age of the tree, the wind, and all the very soft soil from all the rain we've had here brought this rather large oak tree crashing down. Unfortunately, in its path was a late model Hyundai Sonata. You can hear the horn, I believe, without any problem. That has been stuck on since 12:30, much to the annoyance of the neighbors here, to say the least. So this is a manifestation of what Sandy has done here in Wilmington, brought this tree down. It doesn't look like it was terribly healthy. It looked like it had been sort of past its prime for some time, but it needed a nudge or a push, and Sandy provided that nudge and push. So this has got to be dealt with, obviously, sooner or later. They're going to have to cut up this big tree. The 500 block of Ferris, as in Ferris wheel, is blocked off at this point in time, and that horn continues to blare here, as I say, much to the annoyance of the folks who live here. But this is an example, and I think we're going to see lots of this or manifestations like this in and around the area where trees that were not in great shape came down in this wind. As you say, I guess we've seen gusts in the 50-mile-an-hour range. So that's pretty much the situation as you look at the root system. Not much of a root system for such a large tree, and it has definitely come crashing down here.
Thank you so much, John. Hopefully somebody will come out there and shut that alarm off.
Yeah.
Whoever owns that car.
I'm guessing the neighbors
want that. People can get some rest.
I don't know. The car has been badly damaged. The roof of the car is pretty much stoved in. The front windshield broken. I'm certainly not an adjuster, and I won't say that it's been totaled here. That'll be a technical decision on the part of the insurance company. But it's pretty much a mess, and I guess it's somehow jammed on either the alarm or the horn system in some form, one form or another, and it just has been blaring, I guess, this way since 12:30 this morning.
Definitely
Yikes.
a lost cause. That's what it sounds like there. All right, thank you so much for that report, John. Let's send it on over to Catherine Scott, live in East Falls, where it is much quieter, Catherine. That's for sure.
I know, Shirley, that horn is really something, that's for sure. But here in East Falls, a lot quieter, as you said. And actually, it's been pretty uneventful here, which is great news because this is an area where you traditionally see flooding after storms. We have seen a lot of crews come through from the Water Department, Philadelphia Police Marine Unit. You can see that Midvale, Kelly Drive by Midvale is still closed off, and there is a police vehicle right behind that blockade, and also MLK Drive is closed off as well. However, we haven't been told of any flooding on Kelly Drive, so that's the good news. However, if you take a look at the Schuylkill, you can see that the water level is high. It's moving at a pretty good clip when it comes to the current. So we're not out of the clear just yet when it comes to flooding. Sometimes the storm happens first, the flooding happens later. Of course, it's still raining in Philadelphia, and we did get quite a bit of rain yesterday. So it's a situation that we have to continue to monitor. But again, so far, good news here in that it's an area that's prone to flooding, and we haven't seen it flow over onto Kelly Drive just yet. The wind gusts are still pretty strong here. The rain's been on and off. It's lighter right now, but of course, it's still raining. And so throughout the night, we could see a little bit more accumulation as far as that's concerned. The mayor was on a couple hours ago, and he was urging folks to stay at home. Even though it seems like the worst of Sandy has blown through, the wind gusts are very strong, and Sandy did do quite a bit of damage. You can see there is some debris in the roadway, not too much here. Mostly here, there are leaves. There's some smaller limbs we've seen elsewhere, but elsewhere across the area, the limbs have taken down quite a few power lines, so it's something to keep in mind. Also in the city, SEPTA service, we're not going to see that this morning, possibly not even until the afternoon. The mayor says that the SEPTA officials have to look through the entire system this morning, starting at 6 a.m. to see what kind of damage, assess the situation there. That's going to take at least 6 to 8 hours, so you're probably not going to see SEPTA service until this afternoon. But again, so getting around could be difficult, of course, as far as mass transit is concerned. And then here, Kelly Drive is still closed, MLK Drive is still closed. However, the mayor did say if you need your dialysis, not to worry. There are still CCT, SEPTA, and Logisticare can get you to your dialysis. We're live in East Falls. Catherine Scott, Channel 6 Action News.
All right, Catherine, thank you so much.
Sky 6 HD looking down at I-95 in the Penn's Landing area right now. We want to tell you that all major roads, I-95, the Schuylkill, Blue Route, Vine Street, Expressway, Route 1 are shut down until at least 4 this morning. There are also travel restrictions on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Only essential personnel, firefighters, police, city officials are allowed on all of these roads. Of course, check with 6abc.com. We are updating the road restrictions in effect across our area. And SEPTA service, by the way, remains suspended at this hour.
And Sky 6 HD looking live at Philadelphia International right now. No flights in or out of there all day yesterday. Thousands more have been canceled today. Atlantic City Airport also closed, though it hopes to reopen sometime this afternoon. New York City airports, LaGuardia, JFK, Newark, all shut down as well. No plans as yet to reopen, so if you have travel plans, be sure to call ahead. Our coverage continues right here on 6 ABC in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.